Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mapocolops Game Awards for the year of 2024. This is my third year doing a Game Awards video to celebrate our community on the channel and the games played over the course of the year. I'm very happy to finally be presenting you with a Game Awards a little bit later than usual, but that is because we had some pretty big games that I wanted to make sure were finished and wrapped up so they could be properly included in this special project. I hope that you are ready for many, many nominations that may not go the way that you expect. We did play some pretty notable games in the past year. Now, for the sake of how we refer to the Game Awards, I will probably try and end up saying this year, just to make it feel like it's encapsulating 2024. We're in that March, April period of 2025 now, and making some significant headway into some new Let's Plays, and I am tremendously excited already, looking to the future for the Game Awards of 2025. But I wanted to make sure that I put a lot of passion and a lot of effort into a 2024 video to really showcase some special games that we played and to make sure that they are not forgotten. So sit back and relax, because this is probably going to be another one of those long-winded yap sessions, but talking about the games and the community and celebrating what we've built together. And as a thank you, this is always a thank you to all of you. I put all of this effort into this for that reason and that reason alone. I think it's very exciting that I get to look back on the games that I've played across different decades and put them against each other, which is a very hard thing to do. That's not an easy task. The official Game Awards gets to stack up the games that released specifically in that year against one another, and that's easier to do. I am playing absolute bangers from different generations, different decades, different landscapes of gaming, masterpieces of the early 2000s stacking up against some of the greatest games that have ever been made in the last few years. So it is a really challenging and interesting thing to put these games against one another. So it's less of a serious situation here. It really is just a focus on the celebration. Of course, there are winners and there are nominees, and I am increasing the amount of nominees for this year as well. We're having 8 instead of the previous 6, because sometimes games get left off, and it's not because they're bad. It's because, unfortunately, the games that I played that are nominated were simply better. So this is a very fierce competition in terms of the games I played on the channel this year, and I'm very excited about the categories for the nominations, and I hope you enjoy the show. So thank you so much for joining me for the Mapocolops Game Awards of 2024. Let's have a look at our first category. Video game openings are very special. They're very important in regards to the first impression that we are given of that game and how it wants to draw us in, how it sets the stage for the rest of the game and colors your impression of it. I'm so excited all the time whenever I dive into how a video game wants to introduce itself to me. Starting a new playthrough is always very exciting for that purpose and that purpose alone, because I love to get immersed, I love to get absorbed. How is this game going to do that? And I think that that's always a very exciting time, especially when we get to go through a playthrough together, because there's people that are rekindling those feelings. There are people that are discovering it with me. It's a whole different collection of feelings of how we're experiencing a game, playing it and watching it. And there's no better category to start the Game Awards with than the best opening. Now, again, I said 8 nominees over the previous 6. And also, this is my very handy nominations list, because this is unscripted. And it always has been in terms of how we do these awards. We just, from the heart, talk passionately about it, and we'll try and be as focused and clear as possible as we go through and work through a lot of different categories. So 8 nominees, and there is going to be a winner, but there is going to be 2 runner-ups. And we'll also just talk about those for a little bit as well. But we'll talk about the runner-ups first. Got to have the tension before we get to the winner, of course. So without further ado, let's talk about the best openings of 2024. Silent Hill 2 Remake, Armored Core 6, Cyberpunk 2077, Darkwood, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, Baldur's Gate 3, and Ghost of Tsushima. That is a stacked list. It's some incredible openings that all want to draw you into their games in a very different way, but nonetheless, all very, very effective and games that deserve their spot on the list here. However, my third favorite, so in third place, is The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. That game it's stressful in how it is pulling you in at the start. It definitely is a stressful journey, but something that I was very grateful for was the fact that it just lets you experience it and then cycles around and you begin to get an understanding of like what that game is trying to do. And I think it was amazing. The way that Majora's Mask sets you up, explains how things go. You get to witness some really iconic moments, like when you see the 24 hours remain, and there are certain visual elements that you're exposed to in that opening. It's just amazing. And that's what I consider to be the opening of Majora's Mask, that first cycle before it resets. Now, in terms of how I'm talking about these games, you may have noticed that I'm not getting into super specific detail, and that is intentional because there is a big community here, and not everyone has played all of the games. So I will try and be as spoiler-friendly as possible because the people that have played the games know, and the people that haven't played the games, hopefully, they'll get intrigued enough by these winners to maybe play the games themselves or to also watch the playthrough and to see what I think of it and what that game's all about. So we'll see if that works. I can't get into nitty-gritty specific details for that reason, and we'll try and keep it that way for the whole show. So again, I put it in place. People who know the game, they're going to know why, and then other people might want to explore why did that game get ranked over other ones, you know? And again, it's a subjective list and it's fun because there are games from all different decades here. It's really hard to go, hey, this game from 2023 had a better opening than a game from 2000. And it's like, I mean, sure. But again, it's subjective. For me personally, it totally drew me in and I was so excited. And again, the atmosphere, and it really, really worked. And it was something that I was worried about because that opening of Majora's Mask can be quite stressful. And there's people in Camp A or Camp B of like, how am I going to go? Am I going to be turned off the game or am I going to ride this out and see how we go? And that was very exciting. The second on my list of best opening goes to Darkwood, which was a very special game and one that was very unexpected. The game was requested quite a lot by a passionate group, and it finally got its day around Halloween of last year. Halloween of 2024 was cool. We played a few games. It wasn't a massive time, but there was some notable titles that we got to play, and Darkwood was fascinating. That one really grabbed me. That's one of the scariest games, and it's not scary because of its graphical fidelity or realism, and you know, it's the atmosphere. It's this how that game really pulls you in, and it's very immersive for a top-down type of experience because of the way that game is structured. And that opening, how it sets the game up, how it puts you in that world was fantastic. And for the sake of the opening, I would say maybe, up until maybe your first day, the first day up to like that first night of survival. Just absolutely incredible and deserving of spot number 2. I think in the way that we're talking about video game openings, super, super effective. And I was very, very pleased with what we were being presented with. I was like, okay, we're getting into something horrible in a good way when we started that playthrough. So definitely feels right to give Darkwood the second spot. But of course, there is always a winner in every category. And which game had the best opening out of these 8? I do have to give it to Baldur's Gate 3. And for many people, might be an obvious one. It just... Oh, man. Just there's so much to talk about in regards to the opening of Baldur's Gate 3, because there is not only the opening cutscene, which in itself is exceptional. How that's crafted and put together is amazing. Then there's your character creation and how you want to be in that world. And then there is the opening, the introduction, the prologue to the game. Those elements of the opening of Baldur's Gate 3 are really, really well done. And you can't be pulled in more than an immersive Dungeons and Dragons adventure. So that element of showing you where you are in regards to the story with that opening cutscene, which is just gorgeous to look at, creating your character and then figuring out what the hell you're going to do next was really, really fun and exciting. So we are going to give the best opening to Baldur's Gate 3. But again, incredible list of nominees here. Some really, really strong games. We just have to choose our winners. And having an indie game, a game that is from the Nintendo 64 and a modern release game from the past 2 years, all being in that podium, is very cool and it's very special. And that's why we get to throw these games up against each other and see who comes out on top. So that was best opening. Let's move on to the next category. The next category, being best ending, is always something I really enjoy. I love throwing the opening and the endings together because the last impression, what a video game leaves you with, is arguably just as important as the first impression. How a game pulls you in, but how a game says goodbye. And that is really hard to list. This was a really hard category because pretty much every single game that we played, I loved all the way through. And the ending of how we say goodbye to a game is always really hard. And there are short games that don't overstay their welcome, and there are long games that manage to stick the landing. So again, it is a tough category to judge based on how you want to rate game endings. Do you think that games ended too soon? Do you just never wanted it to end? You wanted to be there forever? There are some very special games that leave you with some intense feelings, and my favorite games are the ones that you finish that game, but you can't stop thinking about it for days or weeks, or you just never stop thinking about it and you always go back to it. There might be particular themes, events, just things that stay with you, things that change you even, that give you new perspectives. I think that something that's really amazing about video games and their art form of storytelling is the message that you can be left with, the feeling that you can be left with, something that can really change your outlook on the world. Or it's just a damn good video game and it has an incredible ending and the end credits music just rocks. There's so many different ways that you can close out a game and what they want to leave you with, right? So our nominees for this list was very hard to choose. So our 8 nominees for Best Ending. We have Cyberpunk 2077, Dragon Age: The Veilguard, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Armored Core 6, Blasphemous, Legacy of Kain Defiance, The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, and Baldur's Gate 3, which is a varied list, and it's a surprising list, and it's also a list that makes me go, damn, I wish that I had even more nominees, because you want to shout out some particular games, but this is not that type of show. We have to be rigid about it. So we have our 8 nominees. It's a nice list. It is a nice list. And my third favorite ending out of these nominees is Baldur's Gate 3. A game that is my largest playthrough on the channel, and one that I would have happily kept going. I didn't suffer any burnout with that game, and I was not happy to see it end. I loved the ending. Oh God, I loved the ending, and it was very powerful, and it filled me with a lot of emotions, and I loved it. I don't think it's a perfect ending, and I think that there are some things that are a little awkward about how that game closes out, and my experience with the ending is not a lot of other people's experience with the ending either. There are things that were added later, things that were just not there, and that's not what I'm factoring into my rating, because I'm thinking about my ending and my experience, but I do think it fits comfortably at spot number 3 on my list, because it is a very good ending. Very good ending. And I loved my character arc. I loved the journey. I'm very proud of that playthrough, to stick the landing on it too. And to also end it with a big, long episode as well. I really enjoyed that story ending, and then we capped it off with a little 69 epilogue and just a beautiful playthrough and an incredible ending. And you don't want to get into too many specifics, and it's the one ending of many as well. That's another thing, is there's so many ways that you can end that game. It's very complex thinking about it on that level. And I love that. So it is number 3 on our list. Next up on this absolutely amazingly stacked list, for my second spot of best ending, is going to go to Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon. Oh my God. That game. Oh, it's just one of those games, just like Baldur's Gate 3. It's one of those games, and it's from 2023, and it's a game that people were bugging me for hardcore. Same with Baldur's Gate 3. Both of these games were tremendously hyped up by 2 different sides of my community that just absolutely wished for me to go through and experience that game. They're like, you simply must. And it is one of those games where the payoff is just incredible. Logan, can you not eat the blanket, please? Don't eat the blanket. Just lie there and look cute, okay? Good boy. And so Armored Core 6, The Fires of Rubicon, really is just some crazy journey where you go through that game to get one ending. Yes. But what about second ending? And then what about true ending? That game encourages you to go through it 3 times to reach a definitive and true ending to that game. And I did. I happily went through that game and that experience 3 times, and it just got better every time. So it's not just one ending, but 3 that I got to put into this list with Armored Core 6. And I had a great time in all of them. Even if I just ended the game with that first ending, I'd be very satisfied. But it is the fact that you get to go through it again and for a third and final time that it has earned its spot on number 2. Very, very glad that I got to finally play Armored Core 6. And it was one that really was overdue, I think. That was one that caught a lot of people by surprise. I think it's an interesting one because when Armored Core 6 was announced, I'd never played or experienced the series before. I wasn't a huge mech guy. And we streamed the first game on PS1, and that was fun. And it's just one of those games that wasn't hugely actively on my radar, so it did get pushed a little bit further along my schedule. Again, same with Baldur's Gate 3. That game was not on my active to-do list because I wasn't actively following it. And it was one that I was like, sure, I'll happily get to it. It just goes into the pipeline. So these two games, Baldur's Gate 3 and Armored Core 6, sitting as my runners-up for best ending. And I think those are both, again, well-deserved spots. Well-deserved spots. But there has to be a winner. And when we discuss the winner of the best ending, there can be none other than Cyberpunk 2077. You are not only given multiple base game endings, you are also given Phantom Liberty expansion endings, and all of them, every single one of them, is incredible. It's just so amazing to go through those endings, and even just one of them. Even if I'd only played one ending, it's still at the very top of the list for me. So not only does one ending get the win, it's multiple endings. And I went through that game, and I want to go through it again and again and again. And that is what I'm talking about in the sense of a game's not necessarily just the ending, but the whole game that really sticks with you and it stays with you. And you think about it for so long. And Cyberpunk is that game for me. I am so happy to have finally experienced it in its entirety, going through when it's in like this state of, for lack of a better word, that state of it being complete, with the Phantom Liberty expansion. And you've even got like the push of edge runners behind it. There's a lot of momentum that has just kept building with Cyberpunk, and edge runners and Phantom Liberty only helped to elevate it even further. But the base game on its own, amazing. I had such a great time with it, and we have such different experiences with the game depending on when you played it because of when it came out and all of that, yada, yada, yada. But my experience with the game in 2024, going from the base game into Phantom Liberty, even doing an Edge Runners watch along on YouTube, that was really, really special. So all encompassing of the Cyberpunk adventure and journey on my channel, it is the best ending for sure. And I can happily close out this category with Cyberpunk 2077. Now, this next category is a smaller one, and we do have some smaller categories in this show. And that just happens when you don't play enough games to fill out that particular category. Like we have 3 horror games that we played, not 8. And like I said earlier, in terms of the horror experiences, they were shorter, but they were sweeter, for sure. I really, really enjoyed our Halloween period of 2024, where we got to experience Silent Hill 2 Remake, Darkwood, and Faith. Those were the 3 big games. There was also Alan Wake 2's expansions that dropped around this time also. The Lake House, especially, we'll just give it an honorable mention. We'll shout it out because not technically a game. It's an expansion. It's DLC, but really, really amazing. So Alan Wake 2 is also circled around there as well. And there were some other horror games releasing around that time that were kind of on my radar that just didn't end up getting played. But of course, when we only have 3 games, it's very easy to list those nominees, and then it's just a matter of which one's my favorite. So we did have Silent Hill 2 Remake, Darkwood, and Faith. I really, really loved all three of these games, but it's interesting because you've got two indies and then a remake of a beloved classic. So, going down the list, we have Faith at number 3. Faith is our first runner-up here, and such a unique horror experience because once you strip away that visual element and it's like pixelated 8-bit and they're going for that retro feeling, they have to hook you in with everything else to get you to stay, because there are a lot of people that graphics is a huge roadblock for them. I know a lot of people that only play new games and the most up-to-date graphical games because that's what they need as their first point of entry. So a game like this definitely has a challenge in order to capture its audience. And I had a great time. There's a lot of things about it that really that stick with you. Again, like that sort of element of games that do stick with you in terms of the way that they handle dialogue in that game, like the speech patterns, the music, and how it was released episodically. And we were lucky enough to play the Unholy Trilogy in its entirety, while there was also an added elements to that game where we got to play like a prologue as well. So there was different portions of that Unholy Trilogy that we got to experience. And even then, a lot more was in that game than I even got to experience. And I really, really enjoyed my time with it. So Faith was recommended for quite some time, and I'm happy to tick that off the list, just like Darkwood, which is sitting at number 2 for my best horror of 2024. And we spoke about Darkwood already in terms of the opening, and I will maintain that same sort of feeling, that same opinion in regards to Darkwood's oppressive atmosphere and how that game feels to play. To go through that game, I hope more people can play it. That's like my wish, is more people. Obviously, if you're a horror fan, there's a lot of people that won't be able to get into it if they're not into horror in general, because it's a heavy one. But any horror fan should play Darkwood and just really absorb yourself into that experience, because holy crap, what a game. What a damn game. The way that world is built, the characters within it, the environmental storytelling, and then the more direct storytelling, how that game even closes out, just wow. Darkwood, amazing. And unfortunately not amazing enough to beat our number 1, which is the Silent Hill 2 remake. Oh my God. They actually did it. I think that's the thing, right? That's the thing to think about, is they actually did it. Bloober Team, since rumor, since announcement, were met with nothing but just criticism. They were met with just cynicism. It was pushed off to the side, naysayers and doubters everywhere. Even part of myself was a little bit in that group. Not as much as other people, because I did play Layers of Fear a really long time ago, and I didn't have a negative experience with it. I learned that most people did. I quite liked it, but also that was played in a part of my life where I didn't really expose myself to a lot of horror. So that's maybe that's why, because it was still quite fresh for me and I wasn't desensitized. And I also played The Medium, which was basically their Silent Hill proof of concept. The Medium, I played that on my channel in 2021, and I enjoyed that game. It was very much like, this is our Silent Hill game, and even to the point of having Akira Yamaoka on the soundtrack, with Mary Elizabeth McGlynn even doing a vocal track. You have the concepts of that world and the other world. So The Medium got some attention from me for its Silent Hill elements, and it was just in that state of constantly people being like, Bloober Team on Silent Hill 2, what the hell? And they did it. Like, they released it and they knocked it out of the damn park across the board. It's definitely great that they had such a close working relationship with Konami and some of the old guard from Team Silent really helping to like contribute to this project. I'm very happy that it was successful. Like, I didn't want it to fail. I think people had, high hopes that they really wanted it to be good, and it's better than good. The soundtrack, the redone soundtrack, even with like the classic themes, incredible. It's very combat focused compared to the original, which can be a little bit of a drawback. I think that got a little bit tedious, but outside of the constant combat stuff, the way that they brought the game into the modern era felt right. It felt the changes and improvements that they made felt right. They felt appropriate, and the things that we looked for, that we knew and loved of the original, even as someone who started the Silent Hill series on my channel back in 2020, so still somewhat of like a recent fan, can appreciate all of that and appreciate the remake in comparison to the original. So Silent Hill 2 is my favorite horror game of 2024. We're moving into the next category now, and this is a favorite one of mine. I loved doing this last year as well because it is the best indie game, and it's a really great category because you're either playing these super slept on niche games or something that's just massively blown up and taken the world by storm. The indie genre, that sort of space with video games, is always very exciting because I feel like it's where we get the most creativity and passion, but it has these limits in place, which is usually like financial limitations. It's not the AAA, this is the first quadruple A video game type of mentality, and it doesn't have a million people working on it on contracts and stuff like that. It is a group of passionate people. It reminds me of the tiny groups that used to make the video games that we know and love from the 90s and the early 2000s, and you'd get to the end credits and it was like a group of 15 people and they're all smiles because they're like, look at this game that we love and this game that we made. And that's the stuff that I really love, and indie games remind me of that quite a lot. I really love the indie games, so I think Logan loves the indie games as well. So without further ado, we're going to get into this category as well, which is also shorter than the 8 nominations because we only played 5 indie games. So the nominations for Best Indie Games are Pony Island, The Hex, 2 Daniel Mullins games, Faith, The Unholy Trinity, The Unholy Trilogy, Blasphemous, and Darkwood. So a really great list. And again, that kind of encapsulates what I was talking about in regards to indie games, where you can be playing these sort of the beginnings of someone's history, their resume before they blew up and made the Inscription that we have all gotten to be super exposed to. You know, that before Inscription, there was the Pony Island and the Hex. And honestly, kind of that Pony Island 2 announcement really pushed me to go to the beginning and get that context and find out about Daniel Mullins from the beginning. And I was very glad that I did, because those are some incredible games. The Pony Island is obviously quite a shorter one. We did that in just one episode, but the Hex was a bit more of an actually like fleshed out game. That one was really, really fun and had a full journey in there. And again, this is the interesting part about the indie categories, because it's got me yapping about each game on its own before even like getting into the winners. And that is the thing that I've got to try and catch myself on, because I'm like, I love the indie games, and then I'll start talking about what I love about them so much. So we'll save some time and we'll talk about the winners of the best indie category. And we do have our third spot, our first runner-up, going to The Hex. Just a amazing game. It really is. The way that game is set up from the start, it's very simple in its presentation and how it begins, but it's also like multiple games in one, and that's something that I thought was really awesome. It has different levels that do different genres of games, and it kind of goes and takes you on a journey with these different characters. And there's a story involved in that as well, and a reason why that I just think is really amazing. That game just works so well on a lot of levels, from the story and the mystery to also the gameplay itself. So The Hex deserves that spot for sure. And while we're getting a Pony Island 2, I'd assume that maybe we'll get some references to the Hex in that game too. We'll see. It has that Inscription feeling to it as well. It's like, what I really like about Daniel Mullen's games is there's this 2D, 3D mixture that's been starting to come out, and then even incorporating like a live action element as well, like having the Inscription trading cards and having like pack openings. And I found this weird set. That sort of element, I just think it makes it for a really engaging and fun video game experience. So The Hex, number 3. But moving into number 2 for best indie game is Blasphemous. Really, really loved Blasphemous. That was a gorgeous time. And again, one of those games, when I touched on it in multiple endings, it's another one of those games that has a few endings to get through to a true ending and actually being able to finish it. So I spent a lot of time with that game as well, running through it once, getting 2 of the main endings, and then going through the game again on the additional difficulty mode, changing it up a bit, making different decisions, and then getting the true ending to that game. That was really enjoyable as well. I loved that a lot. So Blasphemous absolutely deserves second spot. The art style, the gameplay, all of that sort of Metroidvania sort of element was really nice. The Metroidvania element was really nice. Yeah, come on. Yeah, right. Come on. Yeah, right. The Metroidvania element of of Blasphemous was really nice, and he's got something to say. I think he disagrees. He disagrees. He doesn't think that Blasphemous should be in second place. I think he thinks that Blasphemous should have been first. Blasphemy, he whispers into the mic. So Blasphemous, number 2. And the second playthrough we did it in Espanol, and got to experience that level of voice acting as well. Very great. So we got the English and sort of the more immersive voice acting, which I think was really amazing as well. So Blasphemous, second place. And now we can discuss the winner. I think this is a category where the winner seems tight in its competition, but I think once you get the runner-ups out of the way, it's quite clear where I'm going to land on, especially if you engaged with the indie games that we played on the channel. And our winner for Best Indie Game of 2024 is Darkwood. Fantastic game. What an experience, truly. And I wonder how many adjectives I'll repeat going through this award ceremony. Probably a lot of repetitive adjectives. That is what unscripted, off-the-cuff commentary will get you. You'll latch on to a few, but it doesn't diminish the meaning or effectiveness of the word, because it is a true statement. So an amazing game, Darkwood. And without getting into the details and trying to, talk about the game itself and maybe spoil things, I will say play that damn game if you haven't already, because it is one hell of an experience. I think it is, and it's hard to recommend a game and then turn around and say it's one of the most oppressive horror games I've ever played. That's a hard sell. But to some people, that might be the perfect sell. So horror games, if you're like, what horror game should I play? And you're not immediately turned off by, a graphical style that's top-down bird's eye view, give that game a shot, please. Darkwood, wow. I would love to experience that game. No, I wouldn't, actually. I would not love to experience that game in virtual reality, but it would be an experience that I would do and I would suffer through for you. It's an interesting element where Darkwood is a top-down game, but it gives you that feeling of you can only see what you're looking at because your character has a field of view and you can see what that is. That was a really exciting and tense element of the game for me, where you couldn't see behind trees or buildings because you can't see behind them normally. So in the game, you can see above, but it's darkness. And when you're looking at it and your eyesight matches up, you can see what's there, if there's people or items or animals or what. And I think that decision to do something like that with the game takes it to another level. It elevates that experience entirely because it makes that game feel claustrophobic while also being something that is so far away from the player character. People tend to take the first-person view is the most immersive you can be in a video game, and VR being like in the shoes of the character. And while that's correct to a degree, the way that you can play a game like that and feel just as immersed as a first-person perspective, I think is truly commendable. So a big recommendation for Darkwood. I hope I did that game justice in that playthrough because I really, really did love it, and I loved playing it. And it's always really satisfying for me as a creator and someone who enjoys video games very much to be able to deliver on something that people have been waiting or asking for a really long time. So working through the recommendation list and having a passionate and excitable fan base for certain games, it's always very fun to deliver. And again, one of my favorite categories is talking about the best indie games that we played. And I'm really excited for the indie games that I will play in 2025 and beyond, because there's always so many to come out. There's so many that keep getting added to my list. I know that there's probably going to be comments in this video about play Nine Souls, play Animal World, play Rain World. There's a few of those. Those are kind of ones that come to mind immediately, but there is a long list. There's a lot that I would like to get to. Like even Blasphemous 2, I will be getting to the sequel and continuing that. And one day, when I'm old and grey and on my deathbed, they might release Silksong, and maybe I'll play that. Maybe we'll play it. Maybe we won't. Maybe we won't live to see its release. How many times have people reposted to delay that game? It's their fault, of course. I'll pop on over to South Australia and I'll have a chat with them. We'll see. I'll become a developer for Silksong and I'll get that game out. That's what we'll have to do to get it done. But that is the best indie game category. And now we get to move on to something a little different. That's right, everyone. Link is coming out of retirement to present the best action adventure game. It has been so many years since my adventuring days in the Ocarina of Time and the hit sequel, Majora's Mask. So long, and I've enjoyed my retirement, and I live out my days peacefully now, for the most part. But here I am. Couldn't find my tunic or my adventuring gear, sadly. Turns out I had to buy one. They sort of, I guess my Legend of Link has gone quite far enough to get costumes, but the pants and the boots, even the sword, not included. For shame. So here I am. This is all that I could muster to kind of hold on to those glory days. But I'm not sure if I'm the chosen hero, or if I'm maybe an old man who hears a bump in the night and say, who goes there? You know, am I wearing pajamas, or am I going to go and save the world? It's a bit conflicting, but I am here today to present the awards for the best action adventure. I'm not really sure how I ended up here in this place of all places. It's a little bit strange and unsettling, but they were kind enough to pull these out of a box, and it feels familiar. So I guess there's some comforting element. This doesn't feel too great to see. You know, they've pulled this out for a bit of a nostalgia, but it's a bit scary actually. I was hoping to be done with that forever. So we'll just get this over and done with in regards to our best action adventure. Okay, so we have 8 nominees. Now, it appears that the action adventure term has been kind of loosely applied to some of these games where, is there action? Yes. Is there adventure? Yes. Let's put it in. Even though there are some games that might realistically sit in a more concrete genre, I feel like these all fit enough, and also, who cares? So, in terms of best action adventure, we have The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask, that's classic, and then who cares about the rest? That's all that matters, I think. But okay, all right, I'm being told I have to read them. Dishonored 2, Deus Ex, some immersive sims that do have both action and adventure. Max Payne 2, Legacy of Kain Defiance, Ghost of Tsushima, and Armored Core 6. Some very action-packed adventures there, and some incredible games, I'm sure. But, of course, there can only be one winner and 2 runner-ups. So when we talk about our best action adventures, we're going to give third place to Dishonored 2, that immersive sim. We got to start the Dishonored series, and while Death of the Outsider has been completed on the channel at the time that we're doing this whole shenanigans, Dishonored 2 was the game we got to play last year, and we've now gone through that whole series. And it was a really special game, being able to play as both Corvo and Emily Coldwin, a dual protagonist story, and being able to see that in a non-lethal way with Emily and a lethal way with Corvo. I think that was really amazing for replayability, because it already has that sense of going through the game differently and seeing what you can do in that evil, lethal, non-lethal, and chaotic elements to it. But being able to switch protagonists as well made that even more refreshing and even more engaging, I think. So I enjoyed that a lot, being able to play through that game twice just to see how different it could be. And I really, really enjoyed the powers that you got between each character. The storyline was really exciting and engaging, and Dishonored is just such a magical and exciting world that has been built and created as well. So I really, really enjoyed that. But of course, we also have our second place. And the second place does indeed have to go to Armored Core 6. Because when we're talking about action, boy, does that game have it. Oh, it has it. The elements that you can endlessly customize and build your Armored Core and go on out there and engage with so many different other mechs, so many different factions, the way that everything is given to you in that game, it truly does feel like that sense of adventure, and there's a lot of exploration and optional content to get from that game as well. And again, did I say action? It has action, guys. And whoa, the set pieces, the fights, the boss fights, really, really enjoyable. Great music. Oh man, I really resonate with that game a lot. That was very, very enjoyable, Armored Core 6. I I feel very confident having it in the second spot. And like I said, this is a weird category in terms of what's action adventure truly. And there's quite a few older games in this list going up against a lot of modern games. So I think it is quite an interesting competition to put these games against each other. So we've had Dishonored 2, a game from the 2010s. We've got Armored Core 6, a game from the 2020s. But who is the winner? What's the best action adventure that could possibly be given to us right now? And the answer is The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Couldn't have been any other game, honestly. It was just amazing. We needed the Ocarina of Time to win. And, I did maybe nudge the judges a bit. Of course, the one and only judge being Mr. Mapocolops. I did say, hey, remember how much fun you had with that game? Remember how that sense of adventure and being the chosen one and the hero's journey and just the pinnacle of action and adventure. Remember how you felt during that time? Wasn't that really, really cool? And, you got to agree with it. It's just amazing. That game really encapsulates that hero's journey. And I love the surprising parts of that game as well in regards to young Link and adult Link and how those stories connect and how those characters connect. And then the implications of that game is really interesting as well. I think it has one of my favorite sort of ending sequences in terms of the boss fights and the story and the climax of all of that as well. It was absolutely fantastic and a great adventure for me, Link. So we're reminiscing on the glory days here of Ocarina of Time. Oh, I miss that Ocarina, playing the tunes for Epona, heading to the ranch, doing all of those interesting things, and then everything went sour after I tried to find Navi. We all know how that went. It was really scary. Can we also give an award to Majora's Mask as like some sort of dual game combo? Do we break the rules for that? All right. Ocarina of Time it is. But Majora's Mask, while Majora's Mask is my sort of more... I prefer Majora's Mask over Ocarina of Time overall in an interesting way because I just love what that game does. But in terms of that pure action and that adventure and that feeling that Ocarina of Time gave me, that feeling is unmatched. I truly loved going through the Deku Tree for the first time and that music and that first dungeon and sort of getting exposed to the first 3D Zelda and these things, these gameplay mechanics that would carry on to inspire so many games in the future. I did hit the cutoff. Unfortunately, I rambled for too long and they said wrap it up and I had to fight off a couple of them to get back here and force them just to allow me my final closing words there before they cut me off. But I just wanted to say it was special. It was special, all right? I had a great time with Ocarina of Time, and it deserves to win Best Action Adventure. All right, this one's a special one as well, especially in the space of modern video games. Not all games need this in order for it to be a great time, but we are going to focus on those shining examples of when they decide to include this in their game and make it top tier. We're talking about voice acting today. Best voice acting in the games I played in 2024. So a very, very tough competition, and this list is very competitive in terms of voice acting that we were given in some new releases and even the voice acting of games past that still hold up over the years. And we're going to look into those now. I love voice acting so much because if the voice acting fails, the game ends up becoming a bit of a joke as a result. It takes you out of the experience. You end up kind of memeing it and joking about it, and the experience is different compared to some voice acting that just enraptures you and you feel like you're experiencing something more than just a video game. That is effective voice acting. Now let's get into our 8 nominees. We have Legacy of Kain Defiance. We have Silent Hill 2 Remake. We've got Elden Ring Shadow of the Erd Tree. It's made an appearance as not a video game, but an expansion to one, but the expansion is just as big as the game. Controversial, but we get to include it anyway because it certainly has some voice acting. Ghost of Tsushima, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Armored Core 6, Cyberpunk 2077, and Baldur's Gate 3. I believe I have listed off everything there after getting distracted by Elden Ring. Best voice acting in all of these games. Tough to rank them. Really, really tough to rank them. And we do take a look and see that a lot of these games are quite modern. And by quite modern, it's all in like the last 5 years. However, one game does stand out enough to get nominated, which is Legacy of Kain Defiance, and that was from the early 2000s. Now, shout out to Legacy of Kain. It needs that shout out. Everyone should play Legacy of Kain. Soul Reaver 1 and 2 Remastered. It's out. This is unsponsored. That's free publicity. Soul Reaver 2 is in my top 5 video games of all time. Definitely check out that series. I said it once and I've said it 1,000 times now. That voice acting quality is Shakespearean. It's perfect. It's so good. And it needs that shout out for it to wrestle with the titans of the modern gaming industry. I think that is the important part that I wanted to mention there. But alas, there could only be one winner and 2 runner-ups. So for our third place for best voice acting, it is Cyberpunk 2077. I, again, mentioned that this is a very, very tough category. The competition is certainly there, and Cyberpunk 2077 has an incredible cast. I played as Fem V, and that was my preferred experience. I have heard the voice of male V, and it's a subjective opinion and what we prefer. It wasn't the voice that I really wanted for my type of character. So I was very, very happy with Fem V. And it's not just focusing on one voice actor, it's focusing on the voice acting of the entire game. So it is across the board. So you do have your Johnny Silverhand, you've got your Solomon Reeds, you've got your Songbirds, and there's so many huge characters in that game, and so many minor character experiences as well, just interactions you have in the world. It's such a genuine and authentic window into that dystopian cyberpunk in terms of how the characters talk, and there's coming up with the language and the slang and how people talk to one another, and it feels very authentic, very genuine. There is nothing about that takes me out of the game. It pulls you into it, and the brain rot of calling people choom and, preem, and just the words that get stuck in your head, that was very entertaining for me. And the characters sold the shit out of their performances, that's for sure. So Cyberpunk 2077 for third place. And now we get on to the next runner-up. Now, this might be a controversial award that we deliver today, but we'll see how we go. Just everybody wait until I've explained myself before we burn the house down. So, my second runner-up for the best voice acting is Baldur's Gate 3. And Baldur's Gate 3 is staggering in so many ways, but it is my second runner-up because I have reasons for my winner. But focusing on Baldur's Gate 3 and really shining a spotlight on it, we have just an exceptional main voice cast, supporting characters, NPCs, villains, animals, just a plethora of talent going across the board in that game. And there's just so much. There's so much. The interactions that you have with the characters, the ways that you can have so many different sequences play out, and the amount of dialogue delivered there that I haven't even heard, and that people who've played the game multiple times haven't even heard, is crazy. It's makes me very excited to play through the game again when I do get to that point to go and do my Dark Urge run, and I get to experience more from characters that we didn't get to see much in my first playthrough of the game. But really, truly, a voice cast to remember, that we have these incredible talents going out and popping up all over the place in other games now, and there were actors that were obviously already popular that are just gonna still continue to find great success. I now understand why Neil Newbon gets his award at the 2023 Game Awards for the voice acting performance. You know, even though my boy Ben Starr, I was rooting for him, but I get it. I absolutely do understand in terms of the performance. And I will say as well, just that main voice cast, I think it's unfortunate in regards to Theo Solomon, who's Will, because there's voice lines that don't play, and there's unfortunate bugs that have prevented him from talking, and it feels really strange that in terms of his performance, he's almost getting shafted by some bugs or video game performance, and that's really sad and unfortunate. There's been so many updates and attention drawn to things in that game, and updates and new stuff, but then Will is still kind of broken. Justice for my boy, you know what I mean? Give him some more things, because really great voice for Will. And Devora Wild as Lae'zel has a really tough challenge of having to be the horrible, abrasive person, which people are going to be like, you're horrible and abrasive, I want nothing to do with you. But you get to know her, and there's so much depth within that character, and Devora does a fantastic job. You've got Jennifer English as Shadowheart. We're starting to see her popping up in a couple of other games. Instantly recognizable voice, which is amazing as well. Tim Downey's Gale, so close to Alistair at first. That was my first impression of being like, I hear Alistair, what's going on here? And I also found that really funny. But I love Gale. He's a precious sweetheart. Samantha Bayhart is Karlak, my tiefling wife. Neil Newbon as Astarion, he was okay. He was all right. He acted. He surely acted. He was there. He made me cry. That's how you get the wins in the Mapocolops Game Awards for voice acting. I guess I have to cry, and then you've succeeded at your job. But yeah, truly, what an amazing voice cast. Even having your other characters that join in regards to like Matt Mercer as Minsk was super fun. One of my favorite characters for sure. I'm actually not sure on the names for Halson and Jahira's voice actors, sadly. So that one has escaped me a little bit. But again, just tremendous talent across the board. And that was just talking about the main cast for a little bit, because you've got just the animals have all of their unique personalities. We've got Saravok. Oh my God. I think Saravok might be my favorite voice to listen to in that game. And there's a lot. And Raphael sang his own boss theme. That's voice acting. And I say all this and I sing my praises, and it's clawing its way up to the first spot on the podium, hanging off the edge. And how is it not won with that praise? That's how close this voice acting is. That's how tight this competition is. So now that begs the question, who's won my voice acting award? Well, I've got an answer for you, and I did say to just hear me out, because I have a perfectly a perfectly reasonable explanation as to why. Because I feel like the Baldur's Gate 3 voice acting not winning, I'm even torn about it, but I really deliberated over this one for a really long time as to which one I think deserves the top spot. And I guess even deserves is the wrong one. Which one do I truly feel? Which one do I keep getting drawn to in regards to the voice acting? And the winner of this award is Armored Core 6, The Fires of Rubicon, coming in for another dub because this game requires you to pay so much attention to the voices because there's no faces. You do not see a single human expression in this game. They have to deliver their lines behind cold metal. And that's really, really challenging. I think the fact that you can't also have the assistance of facial expressions to help you in regards to, you can see that this person is upset. You can see that this person is happy. You can see that this person is being like sarcastic or angry. The variety of feelings that comes with the visual aid. And Armored Core 6's voice cast has to deliver you something special just with your voice. That has to be convincing, and it has to pull you into that world where you're not in a cutscene where you're talking with someone and they're talking to you and delivering you a convincing acting performance. We're literally running around in these giant mechs fighting against corporate enemies, but every single person that lends their voice to that game acted their heart out, and it showed. And again, it was another game that made me shed tears and filled me with a plethora of emotion at so many different points. And there's just so many characters that you form some incredible relationships with that you haven't even seen. And it's just like, that's really special, I think. And that's why I kept being drawn to Armored Core 6 as the winner. It's very, very tight, very close between this and Baldur's Gate 3, because you think about, obviously, the sheer scope of the voice acting required for a game like Baldur's Gate 3. But Armored Core 6, I think, really, truly achieved its goal and what it needed to do, because if that game had bad voice acting, it would be a shock. Like, it would not work in the way that it needs to. And I'm very, very happy that it did, because there's just some stellar characters in there, both friends and foe alike. And the way that all of them talk and communicate, and the way that, depending on if they're human or not, and that level of cadence and how you choose to carry your voice and how they interact with your character who doesn't talk back and doesn't have any voice lines to choose from. It's very much everyone's talking to you, and it's just very immersive in that sense. And to avoid rambling further on the point, I think it really does deserve that top spot. I kept being drawn to it, and I was always impressed by the voice acting. Always impressed, especially going through the game multiple times and seeing how the differences in how characters talk to you and how they treat you. It was just very, very special. So that is our winner for the Voice Acting Award of 2024. Getting into our next category today, we are going into Best Gameplay. Which game felt the most fun to play across all of its elements? The combat, the dialogue, the exploration, just the casual traversal, the downtime. Which gameplay was the most engaging consistently throughout the whole game? What was my favorite out of the bunch that we played for last year? There's some pretty good ones in here, I gotta say. Imagine if I came in here and I said, this list is crap. Obviously not. Obviously, this is a list of bangers. You've come to expect that now, haven't you? Let's get into Best Gameplay. Let's see what we're looking at here. We are looking at a list of 8 nominees, of course. Blasphemous, Armored Core 6, Baldur's Gate 3, Majora's Mask, Cyberpunk 2077, Dishonored 2, The Hex, and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. That is our list of gameplay nominations, and there's some different ones in there. There's a variety of genres because you can have fun in any game, no matter what the genre, of course. And so this is a hard one to throw these games up against each other. How does a game like The Hex stack up against Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? How does a game like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Dishonored 2 go head to head? How do we do this? The answer is easy. It's whichever one I feel was the best. And that makes it a lot easier. We don't get too technical here. We just have a fun time. And I think it's a good list. Obviously, every single game I played had fun gameplay. So it does get pretty hard to go, well, which one was the favorite? Which one? And I'm here to tell you today. So, sit tight, be patient. I'll tell you. My third favorite, our first runner-up, is Cyberpunk 2077. So this is a third place win for Cyberpunk today because that gameplay loop is really, really satisfying. It genuinely is. I love that combat and the traversal of that game. You can build a character that is just in terms of your movement, how you want to get around, like the dashing and the sliding and everything, and the peeking around the corners, and how it feels to be in like that first person and to nail that. Even when like riding a motorbike and you stay in first person, obviously you can change the perspective when you're in a vehicle, which kind of like can take you out of that perspective for the first time. But outside of that, you're pretty much always locked in to whatever's in front of you, and how that gameplay feels was tremendous. I really, really enjoyed that. I loved the melee combat, the gun combat, the net runner style. Like you've got your mono whip, like the hacking that you can do. There's just so many ways that you can approach gameplay and combat encounters that I found really amazing. Different ways to handle bosses and enemies and environments. And man, it was one of those games that succeeds in its gameplay where I don't want to fast travel. The game gives you so many opportunities to fast travel, and I just wanted to drive. I just wanted to travel, to explore that city and to go through it. And I put on the radio, and that gave a great opportunity during the Let's Play for me to edit in me reading like lore entries while we drove in to kind of pad that element of gameplay and traversal. But it was really fun. I loved all of it. The missions that were a bit more close quarters and located inside, just amazing locations and set pieces for you to weave through. Just exploring around Night City was amazing. There's so many optional things that you get to check out and explore. It does suffer from that sort of open world, so many objectives on the map thing. But what I really liked is there's a lot that you can just come up to naturally because it is just the one city, and then you can kind of travel out of it a little bit. I really, really liked that. And then the expansion that they add on top of that in terms of what you can do in there, and that's its own little like map, so dense and filled with activities and things that you can do. Just really, really loved Cyberpunk 2077. So that is in my third place. So my second place, what could possibly be better than Cyberpunk 2077? It's going to go to Armored Core 6. That was my second favorite game in terms of just its like gameplay loop and being able to be in that mech, fight against other mechs. The boss fights were incredible, but just sort of gameplay overall, I really, really enjoyed being able to build a mech as well, because that's part of the gameplay is structuring your vehicle, your armored core. Like the stats that you can do to the finest decimal point of how much this can change or affect things was really interesting. It's very stat heavy, but it doesn't have to be. That's also something I really liked about it. You can approach that as technically or as simply as you like, and you can just go, this looks cool, and I do big boom attack, or this works like this, and I get this amount of cooldown, and then, it's great. It really is amazing. And I engaged with every element of that game in terms of its gameplay. I created emblems and decals and did paint jobs and like really wanted to customize my vehicle, not just get in one and go. Like I wanted to sit down and spend time in that part of the game, and I did. And that's just one part of Armored Core 6 that I really enjoyed. I loved how those levels, those environments were structured, the objectives that were given to you and how you wanted to handle those, just really amazing. So given that explanation, that's why Armored Core 6 is confidently in my second spot. I don't have to talk about Armored Core as much with Cyberpunk. It's kind of interesting. There's less to talk about, but I do rank it higher just because of how fun that game was to play as well. And I loved how refined those parts of the game were. It was a very fine-tuned and seamless experience in Armored Core 6. Very, very well-made game. Not any hiccups whatsoever. So incredibly well made and just very, very satisfying to play. But now we get to talk about my favorite, the winner of Best Gameplay for 2024. And out of those nominees, my favorite was Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. That game's gameplay and its additions, what it was able to build on for the sequel over the original, was so enjoyable. I loved that they took something that was already so well made, so fun to go through, and added even more to it and made it even better than it was before. Rebirth's gameplay, the traversal, the combat was just truly a joy. And there's a drawback in that game does suffer from the sort of go and activate this tower and it gives you points of interest thing. It's not much of a negative for me because exploring the world of Final Fantasy VII is always a positive for me. So there was a gameplay mechanic that was very tropey, but it allowed me to experience those things instead of potentially missing them because it draws your attention to them. And I'm fine with that because they created some absolutely gorgeous environments for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It was our first game when we were able to go outside of Midgar, and speaking sort of plainly and not too in-depth, it is the part where the story of Final Fantasy VII truly opens up and shows you such a beautiful world instead of the steel confined city of Midgar that Remake centered on. So Rebirth and the way that it handled the zones and how you could travel that world, I think was really, really well done. And they were able to sort of compromise the original open world from the PlayStation 1 of you being a big guy on the world map and you run around and you hit the landmarks and you go and check out those places. But the way that they made, sort of the landscape and the world between point A to point B very interesting and filled it with stuff to do, that was really, really enjoyable. So I loved the optional stuff that you could do in that game and strove to complete pretty much as much as possible. Even going through and doing like the optional objectives to go into the really difficult fights that I did in my final episode of Rebirth. And that's not even touching on the combat yet in terms of the team up abilities, the way that your characters interact with each other, the conversation that takes place between characters while you're fighting. I think the banter is really fun and enjoyable. As a cohesive gameplay element, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was just always enjoyable for me. I loved the mini games that they added. That was a big turnoff for some people, but it's optional. You can skip all of that. You didn't have to. And I think that the amount of effort that they put into making Final Fantasy VII fun is very important to me. They also added Queen's Blood. They added a full card game to that game. And as a triple triad fanatic, that meant a lot to me too. Queen's Blood was very, very fun and it was unique. And I really, really liked that. There was just so much. And that was the thing. It's not a game that took itself seriously, but it has its serious moments and it respects those moments, but it allows itself to be fun. It allows itself to be silly. It has those mini games, which it retains the original game's charm so well when it does things like that. So I was so happy to see the additions on that level. Gameplay for me it's kind of easy that it goes to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And I think it's a genuine one for me as well, because Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has been in a few categories that you'd almost think it would win because Final Fantasy VII is my favorite game of all time, but I've been very fair to it and not been like, Final Fantasy VII wins every category that it gets nominated in, because I truly do believe that there are games that I played that beat that one out. But for gameplay, I just had so much fun with it, and I would play more of it, and there will be more of it. There's going to be a part 3 in a few years, and I'm going to be just as excited to play anything that they put in there as well. So my winner for best gameplay of 2024 is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Okay, this next category is a continuation from the last one. It's kind of split up into a subcategory, if you will, which is the best boss fights. I think boss fights can be so iconic and deserve such attention that it needs to be highlighted because they can be some of the most notable and renowned elements of a game. So I think boss fights is definitely a category all on its own. And we have 8 nominees here going into an honorable mention as well as our 2 runner-ups. So this is an interesting one. I'm going to give an honorable mention and you'll see why when we get there. If you know, you know. And I think my explanation to why it's an honorable mention is certainly valid as well. So taking a look at our games here, we have Blasphemous, The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, Armored Core 6, Baldur's Gate 3, Silent Hill 2 Remake, Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Those are our games in the best boss fights category. All of these games had really, really exceptional boss fights. Even a couple of games that didn't make this list had good boss fights, but just didn't have that sauce to put it among the heavy hitters up here. So this is probably the most comfortable. And I did toss and turn over this list a bit, and then I thought on it a little bit harder, and some games got removed, other games got put in, because the way that the games can handle boss fights, very different from game to game. Some of them are kind of put naturally within the story. Some of them are the most major set pieces and are like milestones of progression. Boss fights are amazing in how they're put into video games and can be quite different. For some games, the boss fights are the fights. And for some games, boss fights are these sort of ways to cap off specific moments in a story. So it is really amazing to see how different games can put important highlights on certain characters or events that culminate in a boss fight. So going into this list, our honorable mention is going to go to Baldur's Gate 3. This game has a lot of fighting, it has a lot of fights, and a lot of boss fights as well. And when I think on the boss fights of that game, I do think of one in particular, and it is like the boss fight. It really is, it truly is. And if you've played the game, you know what it is, and I'm not going to mention it because there are probably a lot of people that haven't experienced it. And it's a moment best experienced within the game and not right here. But it is one of my favorite boss fights ever, it must be said. However, I think overall within the game itself, it does not beat the games following it in my list. So I will give an honorable mention to Baldur's Gate 3. It did truly have some amazingly memorable boss fights. One in particular, of course, being just fabulous. But we're going to get into our runner-ups. So in third place, we're going to give our runner-up to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. That game perfectly translated the boss fights of the original and then some, with so many additions, so many amazing set pieces, and they were handled beautifully. It gave me boss fights that I wasn't even ever considering as a really huge fan of the original. There are certain enemies and certain fights that you think oh man, I can't wait to get to this and see how they've handled it. Same with the remake. There were certain enemies that were even put into boss fight category because those enemies had become so popular, so well known, that there was just such a significance surrounding them. And I think that's something that Remake and Rebirth were able to take from the original, and also the legacy that has been built over time, and reflect that accordingly in the game. So there were just really, really fun and amazing boss fights all throughout that experience, and it's hard to even pick a favorite out of the bunch. And there's some crazy ones in there too, just some absolutely crazy ones. So Final Fantasy VII Rebirth really does feel like a concrete third place, considering the ones that have beaten it, because I wanted to put it higher on the list. I really, really did, in terms of those boss fights that I got to play against. Just truly, truly such a fun time. And every single boss fight was... There was not a single boss fight in that game where I looked back on that and said, that sucked. You know, like, that wasn't good, how they handled that. They were all handled really, really well. So Final Fantasy VII Rebirth in third place. And now we're going to talk about second place. Our second runner-up in best boss fights, which is going to go to Elden Ring Shadow of the Erd Tree. So this is From Software. Boss fights are their bread and butter. It is one of those games where that is its most notable element for most people. It's all about the boss fights, and particular bosses that become so infamous. They just rise into the top pantheon of best boss fights of all time and hardest bosses of all time. And boss fights and From Software across, you know, sort of like the Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Sekiro, Elden Ring, that's what it's all about for a lot of people, is those just incredible fight sequences against big named bosses, incredible set pieces, overcoming those difficult challenges. And Shadow of the Erd Tree absolutely conquers that arena. It does have boss fights that I wouldn't consider to be stinkers per se, but I would say there was some very frustrating ones that became a unique challenge to overcome. Some of those boss fights were very interesting. However, that's a very small part of Shadow of the Erd Tree, because the bosses that they got right and the very unique bosses that they gave us were really fantastic. One of my favorites very early on is our Dancing Lion Boy, because out of just sheer respect for the animation work that would go into creating that. And that's another element that we think of, because when I'm thinking best boss fights, I'm not just thinking, how fun was it to play? How fun was it to fight? It's how the boss was created, the set piece surrounding it, the build up to it, the story implications. There's a lot that goes into thinking about boss fights and its place in the story and in the game. So a lot of those boss fights were skill checks, absolutely, as well. And something I really appreciated about Shadow of the Erd Tree was it wasn't an expansion where you could be the max level and go in and steamroll everything. It had a system in place to make sure that you could go in at whatever level and still level up appropriately to fight those enemies. And I really, really loved that. I had some particular notable bosses that are some of my favorites, and of course, the most difficult one has to go to the final boss of the expansion, without question. That is the first From Software boss fight where I've actually had to push the episode a little bit further out of schedule to release it because I couldn't beat him on time. Every other time where that's come up, I've stressed and put my head down and just grinded it out and beaten that boss through sheer force of will. But this was the first time I had to actually delay an episode by a little bit, just to get it out. And yes, defeated it pre-nerf, because you have to mention that, because that's another weird element of the From Software boss fight community, is there's different ways to tackle those, whether it's pre or post nerf, or with summons, or with mimic tiers and things like that. There's so many ways that you can do boss fights, whether it's with co-op as well, or summoning, or whatever. It's all valid in my eyes. I understand the sort of YouTuber element where people want to see someone overcome these challenges on their own without... They want to see great difficulty. They want to see the suffering to overcome that difficulty. It can be a little bit toxic sometimes, but there is an element to it I understand in regards to these boss fights. But we did go through Shadow of the Erdtree without any summons or mimic tears or anything like that. And I loved all those bosses, even the really, really challenging ones, whether it's Stockholm Syndrome or not. For that final boss fight, I truly loved the overwhelming challenge of that one, because it became something satisfying to learn the very minuscule openings and how to exploit those and everything that you could do in those elements, even if that second phase was truly something god-awful to figure out. But even with that being said, I really did love it. So I'm not going to name bosses particularly, because there might be some people, very small portion, that might not have gotten to experience Shadow of the Erdtree yet. So we'll leave that. But if you know, there's some very good bosses all the way through. Some of the best bosses across all of Elden Ring are in that expansion. So Shadow of the Erdtree gets the number 2 spot for best boss fights. We're going to continue that From Software train and give the winning award to Armored Core 6, The Fires of Rubicon. This had my best boss fights for 2024 because, again, From Software know how to create a boss fight. And when there is story and voice acting and character interaction attached to it, oh boy, does that shine through. Like, Sekiro is my favorite of the From Software games in terms of like that sort of style. I would say that Armored Core 6 and Sekiro were like right next to each other in terms of like my favorite From Software experiences. And that goes to show truly how much I value narrative and also like story character interactions. And those games are the ones that have it so much more than Dark Souls, Bloodborne, and Elden Ring. The narrative and the character interactions are there, yes, of course, but you also have to go searching for a lot of things, and there's a lot of missable interactions that you can have. But when it comes down to Armored Core, and Sekiro is another example, there is a particular storyline that is definitely being given to you there, and I truly loved it in Armored Core 6. So Shadow of the Erdtree and Armored Core 6, they both go into that same space with like second place and first place, but Armored Core 6 wins because it has that character interaction. It has that story that just makes the boss fights even more high stakes. It makes it so significant when you're presented with the introductions of certain enemies and how it factors into the overarching narrative. The fact that there's 3 playthroughs that have different encounters, different fights, depending on what you do. That is amazing. And there are optional boss fights in there as well, where you can go through and have your like one-on-one interactions in the arena, which is also part of the story. So pretty much take what I was talking about with Shadow of the Erdtree and then apply that to Armored Core 6 and then some. It just has more that pushes it past into the winning category for me. And the more that I talk about Armored Core 6, like I just have so much praise for that game. And when I put Elden Ring and Armored Core 6 next to each other in a category like this, it's a moment for me to say, go play Armored Core 6, because it is woefully underperforming in comparison to Elden Ring. And I know that the Dark Souls formula is the mainstream one. That's the super popular one. And then asking someone to dive into the 6th entry of a mech fighter is much different, but it's so worth it. And I really loved jumping into Armored Core 6, and that's like a fresh new world within that game series to explore and to play around in. So Armored Core 6, go and play it, goddammit. I wish that Armored Core 6 was as popular as Elden Ring was in terms of that sort of From Software lineup. It's really damn good. So that is the winner of Best Boss Fights for 2024. Just here then, into the camera. All right. Hello, everyone. Gale of Waterdeep here. Now, I'm missing my signature hairstyle, you may have noticed. Unfortunately, Karlak got a little too excited fire breathing at the camp last night, singed my hairs right off, the flame was so bright, it's actually kind of blinded me a little. So I managed to procure these specs from somewhere down in the lower city of Baldur's Gate, and I can present myself for the best RPG of 2024. Before we do this, I think we have a mod that might be able to fix this hair scenario, and then I can look beautiful and present this award. So we'll try that now.
Ooh. Ooh. Big Naturals mod. I'm sure I've got a spell for this one.
Right then, I guess we'll do it this way instead of going through all of that nonsense. I do not wish to be a four-legged creature once more. We'll leave that to scratch. We're going to just jump into the best RPGs of 2024. Now, this category will include some games that fall into different varieties of the role-playing game, because the role-playing game genre, there's action RPGs, but there's also computer RPGs. It's, you've got your JRPGs. It's an umbrella. And we have a best RPG category. So there is 5 games in this list that fall under the umbrella of the RPG. And looking at this list of nominees, we have Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Dragon Age: The Veilguard, Fallout 2, Cyberpunk 2077, and Baldur's Gate 3. Now, that's a pretty nice list. Those games were all, in their own way, incredible. And I had a really great time with all of them. I really enjoyed all of those games so much for different reasons. Some were very, very engaging on the story front. Some just absolutely brilliant in terms of gameplay, and then others that might be a little bit older and don't stack up in regards to modern gameplay elements, but still absolutely filled with charm. And I think that's why I appreciated every single game on this list. Even the most controversial game on this list had one of my favorite endings of that game's series, which is still a pretty big positive merit to give that particular game. But of course, we have to decide what was the best out of this bunch. And our third winner, our first runner-up, is Fallout 2. And I adored Fallout 2. We played Fallout 1 the year before, and we finally got to check out Fallout 2. And crossing that game series off my list in terms of the older isometric CRPGs of Fallout 1 and 2 was a dream come true for me as someone who was quite obsessed with the Fallout 3 and New Vegas when I was a teenager. That took up quite a significant portion of my gaming time in my teenage years, and I didn't have access to a PC at that time. I just was a console gamer, and the earlier Fallouts was a situation where I was like, hopefully I'll get to play that one day. Or at that point in time, I was like, maybe they'll remake them or remaster them or whatever. And of course, that has never happened to this day. And I played the original games, and I'm so glad that I did. I really, really loved getting to know that gameplay system. The amount of depth to the storytelling and character interactions was really nice. I loved that gameplay. I would really like to see Fallout 1 and 2 in a modern Fallout type of gameplay, but I really, really liked what I was playing, and the locations and being able to see sort of how the lore of Fallout began was really, really fun. So that's kind of an unforgettable experience for me, especially getting to the ending sequence of that game. Just playing through that was an absolute joy, and I'm very excited to revisit Fallout 2 specifically as well, because it's a game that seems to have a lot of fan attention in terms of potentially mods, and even just playing it again vanilla and doing things completely different. I'm very, very interested in that. So Fallout 2 in third place. Our second favorite RPG of 2024 is going to go to Cyberpunk 2077, because that game, again, I'm repeating myself from earlier, where it really has struck a chord with me, and it's something that has stuck with me throughout this whole year of gaming and beyond. I think it's truly special. I really loved the ways that your character could be built and the way that your character could progress through the game. There is arguments against its levels of like RPG-ness, but I liked the 3 pathways that you could choose for the backstories. I liked that they were playable, because that's better than nothing. Even if it's just this short introduction that hurls you into the story, I like that you do have unique entries into the game. And that can affect particular things that do reverberate through the rest of the game. I like that there is a pretty significant amount of roleplay in that sense of sticking to your corpo background, being the street kid, being the nomad, but even allowing yourself the character development to change as you can go from one and sort of become more of the other in your choices. And I love that there is also your male and female Vs and what can be done between those 2 characters as well, who you choose to ally yourselves with, how you choose to interact with the man in your head. There is so many ways that you can build your character gameplay-wise, whether you want to be more technical, more physical, more stealthy, and I love the approaches that you can take in Cyberpunk 2077. It's hard to really get into the nitty-gritty without yapping about it for so long, and we're taking bits and pieces of Cyberpunk 2077. We've kind of broken that through whenever it's been mentioned in this show so far. But as a role-playing game, I felt so truly immersed, and I felt like my character as much as possible. And I think the first-person element of that, when they sort of advertised it, it got that pushback for not being third-person, because like Witcher fans were like, I want to see my person and do third person perspective. I think it really, really works in first person, and it would require so much more work to do it in third person. And when I think back on games that allow the first and third person perspective, like Elder Scrolls and Fallout, for example, I never really played those games in third person. So for me, it wasn't really a particular hang up. I loved being in the head of my character and seeing it from that perspective. So Cyberpunk 2077 is my first runner-up there. So now we look to the winner. We have Fallout 2 in third place, Cyberpunk 2077 in second place, but there is a winner of the best RPG, and it can be none other than Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur's Gate 3 is my favorite RPG of 2024. I think that was one of the definitive confirmations that was in the bag before we even started this show. I think that was inevitable, really. Baldur's Gate 3 as a role-playing game is single-handedly one of the best role-playing experiences I've ever been able to have in a video game and in life. I cannot even believe the freedom allowed to you in that game. I still can't believe it. I finished the game. I still can't believe the way that you can create your character and be so wildly different. And I've only played through the game once, and I already am aware of that sort of overwhelming factor of role-playing that you can do in that game, in terms of the characters you can choose from, the backgrounds that you have, the specializations, what type of character you can be. And I mean, Dungeons and Dragons as a setting is a very freeing and creative process. You are allowed to do a lot of things in a Dungeons and Dragons setting. So Baldur's Gate has a big advantage in terms of the type of role-playing experience that it is, being based off a game like that. If you played a Dungeons and Dragons experience that was more like you play one particular guy in the world of the Forgotten Realms, that's going to be a whole different ballgame. But the fact that they truly try and craft this Dungeons and Dragons level experience that you can have in a video game and do it very successfully, so exciting. And I think that alongside there's other big Dungeons and Dragons properties out there that are really just pushing it into a form of mainstream, which I think is really, really fun to watch. That sort of Dungeons and Dragons type behavior go from the exclusive nerdy groups that, you know, everyone has sort of like stereotypical view on those, to being launched into it being much more accessible. I think that's amazing. I think it's much more approachable than, you know, decades past. There's this element of, no, actually Dungeons and Dragons has always been cool and fun, and now you should probably do it. Because I think people are like, I don't want to do that nerdy stuff. I've met a lot of people that have been super, super hesitant and resistant to any sort of Dungeons and Dragons or that fantasy role-playing element. And then now look at that completely differently. And I think Baldur's Gate 3 is just one of those very, very huge reasons why. I absolutely adore this game in so many ways. I can't wait to replay it. And it truly is just easily and obviously my favorite RPG of 2024. And I could write a whole essay on why, and I think it's pretty obvious why, so I don't really need to. It's just a given. It's an award that's a given at this point. The fact that I'm just so excited to run through that game again and be something completely different. And, you know, there's a part of me that was like, I could just do that again and again and again and see so many different things. And there are people that do that. I got so many comments about Baldur's Gate 3 being like, you've seen something that I have not seen in multiple playthroughs. And I think that's the true fun of like how you decide to handle your character, how you want to role play in that world is what you're going to be exposed to at varying degrees. If you're not going to see the evil results if you're doing the rightful just path, you know? So an amazing game with so much variety, so much role playing, it had to win. So that is the best role playing game of 2024. And now let's get into the next category.
Not the spank rap, rock and roll. Sips of passing in the top, riding high, my slides a shot. Metal burning beneath my skin, I'm chipping in, chipping in. Ships are buzzing in blood shot, riding high, my slides a shot. Metal burning beneath my skin, I'm chipping in, chipping in. Got my back to the wall, chipping
Okay, so this next category is a very special one for me, and this is Best Soundtrack. I am a big music person. I love so many different types of music, but I think video game soundtracks are something that I spend most of my time listening to. I really love to get immersed in those soundtracks because they can make or break scenes in games, how they truly want you to feel and convey the emotions of what's going on. And there's just so many beautiful soundtracks out there that I do find myself drawn to listening to soundtracks when I'm doing stuff and going about my day. There's something about it that helps me focus more than other music. So video game soundtracks, it's something very special to me. So I love when we get to look at the games that we've played and how they've handled the music. And while we do have a few winners here and one main winner, I could talk about every single game that we've played at length in terms of the music, because there's just so many special scenes and so many special pieces of music that this was tough to go over, tough to deliberate. So we're going to list the 8 nominees of Best Soundtrack for 2024. Looking at these here, we have Armored Core 6. We have Silent Hill 2 Remake, Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, Deus Ex, Cyberpunk 2077, Baldur's Gate 3, and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So a very interesting list here. We have a couple of oldies, but some goodies in there, and then a lot of recently amazing and fantastic soundtracks that we've been presented with. All of them so special in their own way, and I think with a list like that, you can imagine how one could talk at length very passionately about the soundtracks for games like these. But of course, we're going to focus on 3 in particular. So we're going to give our third spot to The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. There's just such a fantastic level of, just such a fantastic variety of pieces of music in that game that fit all of the different areas that you go to. The boss themes are fantastic. Even the way that music works its way into the game itself, you have to play the ocarina, and there are those themes that worm their way into your brain. There's musical jingles when you obtain items and open chests, and there's music is so heavily intertwined with what the Legend of Zelda series is, at least from what I've experienced. I've experienced a few games so far, and they all feel very much the same at its musical center. There's a lot of music within the identity of the series, if I guess that makes sense. And Ocarina of Time introduces to me so many beautiful themes. The Gerudo Valley theme, it's a classic. We love it. It's one of the greatest ever. But there's also that main menu theme, which is just so beautiful. I listened to the old Deku Tree Dungeon. I listened to that music for weeks after playing through it. For weeks, I would put it on. It's like 10-hour version, and I would just listen to that. And that stunned me in the playthrough as well when I entered that dungeon and that music hit, and I just couldn't believe it. It was such a special piece of music. It might be my favorite piece of music from the game, next to the Gerudo Valley. But you've also got how music is worked into the game in a dynamic sense, because you've got, towards the end, you've got the organ being played as you're climbing there. It's getting louder and louder as you ascend to the fight. It's just so special. It really is so special. Music and Zelda just hand in hand. Very, very special for me. And I really enjoyed being able to have such an iconic soundtrack from an iconic video game be so high up in this list because I think it absolutely deserves it. It was tough not putting it in second place even. And I have reasons for that, but we're going to get there. But Ocarina of Time is third on my best soundtrack. Moving into our second runner-up here, second place for best soundtrack. This one is going to go to Baldur's Gate 3. This being such a huge leap in time from Ocarina of Time, we are jumping forward into 2023 where, oh my lord, Boris, you cooked, sir, and gave us such a beautiful soundtrack with so many memorable themes, some of them just so gut-wrenchingly emotional, ones that were actual tearjerkers too. Just going through so many of them of just the main menu theme, how it goes into character creation. You've got your Down by the River, you've got your I Want to Live, you have the theme that plays, the theme, Down Comes the Claw. Just fantastic composition. The power as well. Oh, the power is just, what a tune that is. That soundtrack, all encompassing of that Baldur's Gate 3 journey and experience. It's really hard to wrap my head around that. That's how huge that soundtrack is to me. It's massive, and I'm still working my way through in my own time that soundtrack and so many other elements to it. But the fight scenes, the emotional character moments, the intimate moments, these really beautiful story moments are elevated by the soundtrack. Really, honestly, Baldur's Gate 3 blew me away with its music multiple times, and there's so many themes there that I think are sort of all-time greats that will persist for a very long time. Some of those that I listed, of course, because you have some themes that end up being very closely associated and tied to characters' stories as well, or they play at very crucial moments that just twist the knife a little bit deeper as you're already weeping over certain events. But it's not just the emotional themes that are the highlight there. It really does nail that sense of exploration and how it feels when you're going through areas and boss fights. And like I said, even just the main theme that plays, there's such a funny thing of just how that worms its way into your brain, of the chanting that plays of the oh, and how that goes into music. And you sit on the main menu for a while just wanting to listen to that. And I think that's truly great. So Baldur's Gate 3, second place. But if we want to give one of these games in particular my top spot and to be my absolute favorite for 2024, undeniably so, I will give it to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And Final Fantasy music in general is some of, if not my favorite music that's ever been composed. So while there's probably a level of being biased towards Final Fantasy music in that sense, there's a reason that I love it so much. It very truly resonates with me and my identity, and it's kind of shaped who I am as a person because I've played Final Fantasy VII for my whole life of gaming, and that was from a very, very young age, around 4 or 5 years old. I had been playing Final Fantasy VII, and I've been playing it ever since. And so the remake is very special and important to me, and it was my favorite soundtrack of 2020 with the remake. Rebirth is my favorite soundtrack of 2024. It's truly, truly iconic and special too, because not only does it bring those older themes and bring them into modern orchestration and just beautiful composition, it adds to those themes in a way that just feels so natural, so right. And it adds so many more pieces of music as well. Just such a huge soundtrack. Rebirth soundtrack is staggeringly large. And again, it's just one of those ones where I'm like, I'm still working my way through so many pieces of music in that on their own. But I'm blown away. Like Remake and Rebirth, the way that they give, instead of there being, here's your battle theme and here's your boss theme, it's like, no, here's unique boss themes for all of them. Let's do something different for each of them. Let's give it something that kind of fits their vibe, fits their mood. It blows me away. And the fact that like the official Game Awards that we get has recognized Remake and Rebirth for best soundtrack both of those times as well, it feels very valid. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is, unquestionably my top spot. And while I acknowledge a level of being biased towards Final Fantasy music in general, this was a really tough list, even with that in mind, because the rest of the nominations on this list were also astounding. That's the really hard thing. Like Cyberpunk 2077, we'll give that an honorable mention too, because the Phantom Liberty theme, oh my God. So it's like the rest of the nominations are like honorable mentions because that's really tough. Like the Silent Hill 2 remake soundtrack, absolutely crazy. The way that they brought... Silent Hill 2... that gave me goosebumps, scared me. I didn't expect that to move. Okay, Silent Hill 2 remake, Reveal, Vertical Pyramid Head. The way that those themes were also brought forward, fantastic, really amazing. So the whole list are winners here, but Final Fantasy VII Remake is my number one. carrying on from the best soundtrack, we're going to connect this one with best sound design, similar to best gameplay and best boss fights. These sort of go hand in hand. While you have the musical element that really helps, you need that good sound design to also elevate that experience and sell it to you right. You want that sound design to hit you perfectly. You want things to feel like, that's what they sound like. And even hearing, like, what would this fantastical situation sound like, and the way that they really need to come up and invent new sounds, and the way that they need to confirm, you're like, yep, that sounds like that. That's what that should sound like. That's very accurate and important, as well as how they can really pull you into an experience, because they can very easily take you out of it as well. So in regards to best sound design, we have some pretty incredible nominees here as well. So we're going to go through the list. Armored Core 6, Deus Ex, Cyberpunk 2077, Baldur's Gate 3, Darkwood, The Hex, Silent Hill 2 Remake, and The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. So those are our nominations for that one. A pretty competitive list, I would say, for different reasons. And I think hopefully as I list off those names, we're all understanding why. You're like, oh yeah, that would be what really sells that game in terms of its sound design. And even more so when we start talking about our actual winners. So I'm going to give our first runner-up third place to Cyberpunk 2077. The way that game sells you the sounds of Night City is truly amazing when it comes down to that city actually being alive, that city being a character in itself. You do truly feel that going through the world. They fleshed out that city so well, how that city used to work and how it works now. Again, we're talking about how I've experienced it. So luckily I got to experience better and improved NPC behavior, I think. But the way that the NPCs talk and interact, and the way that world feels in terms of all the little things that you interact with, where it's like walking past market stalls or navigating menus and like interacting with vending machines in the world, how all of your equipment sounds, how it feels to like how your movement sounds. There's so much about that world. And again, it comes down to immersion with Cyberpunk, just tremendously immersive, and the sound design only accentuates that. A very quick and easy one for Cyberpunk 2077 in third place. But following that, in second place, is going to be Silent Hill 2 Remake. And I think I'm quite happy to give it to this one as well. And sound design and horror, very, very important as well, because you want that horror experience. Well, you say you want it, but a game's goal, especially a horror game, is to have you on edge. It is to scare you, to unnerve you, to unsettle you. There is many elements of a horror experience, and audio design is so crucial, because you don't want to end up having Resident Evil 1 director's cut basement. You want to have unnerving big knife scraping along the wall, and like like that stuff that's going on as you're like walking through a hallway of like pulsating flesh and metal. You don't want you want that to be harrowing. You want that to be unsettling. And Silent Hill 2 Remake's way of giving you that is exceptional. They really took so many elements of the original, and I think improved it. Really, for lack of a better term, there's just so many things from that original that they've been able to take and build on. And even when it comes down to like when you're just like beating up enemies and like finishing them off, and like those visceral sounds are all there. The way that James interacts with things in the environment and how everything sounds, it's all very aggressive. And I think that is very perfect for Silent Hill 2, especially. It's a very aggressive type of game in terms of the way that you are met with so much onslaught from enemies, the way that James interacts with the environment. The combat is very brutal, and it sounds like it too. The sound design of legs crawling up walls. Ugh, it's horrible. It's horrible. And I love it so much. So Silent Hill 2 Remake gets the second place for sound design. And finally, which game out of these 8 did better than those two? Which game truly sold its sound design in a way that I think almost clears the rest by a long shot? Our winner of Best Sound Design is going to go to Darkwood. Oh, what a fantastic game. Only made more dreadful by its sound design, because that game is sort of like the epitome of playing a game on edge. I don't think I've played a game on edge more than that. And I've played some really unsettling horrors on the channel, and it's really good when you get to a point where you've played quite a few horror games. You do get a bit desensitized to the surface level stuff, and you start to kind of be able to see how horror games work. But there are definite exceptions, and there is a rare few collection of horror experiences that do something different, and they can still get you. They're effective in how they present their horror themes or their scariness, per se. It's not like we're just going to jump scare you and make you jump all the time. It truly is. It's the most oppressive atmosphere going into Darkwood. Like I think I mentioned quite a few times playing that game, I was like, this is probably the most oppressive atmosphere I've ever had to play through in a game, and it's so stressful that I'll get to a point, I'm like, all right, I can't play anymore. I have to end the episode. We gotta stop. Not due to like not enjoying the game. I was really liking the game. It's just like I feel like I just need to like reset, and then we can go back in. You truly feel like you're the character in Darkwood at that point. You're like, oh my god, you're like walking through complete darkness, and the way that game with headphones on is a must, because it just sounds moving around you and things to throw you off. Like you'll be hearing things and you think, that's it, I'm doomed. It's over. And it was maybe something playing tricks on you, or something that was like genuinely there and that you've missed, or like someone just like walks past you in the dark. And that feeling that Darkwood gives you in terms of its sound design, and that's just talking about like exploring in the darkness. There's the noises of the things that you interact with in that world, and how enemies sound, and all of it. Even just the way that game can handle like the musical elements, or the ending, specifically like the final ending, the sound design of that is just fucking crazy. So Darkwood definitely gets the first spot for sound design. And like I said, I think this is one of the first awards here where the winner kind of clears it by a really big margin for me. And that's saying something, because again, this is a really good list of nominations. Like I wanted to give some shout outs specifically to like Majora's Mask. And that's why I did Majora's Mask over Ocarina of Time, because that game is so wacky and weird and surreal, and the sound design accompanies that really, really well. Like that, just like unsettling laughter, and like the way that game throws you into some really weird moments, and the sound design just goes so well with it. Zelda's really good with sound design, so an honorable mention to that, absolutely. But I'm happy with that list. So again, my best game for sound design for 2024 goes to Darkwood. Moving right along, we're in the next category now, which is Best Narrative. So, of course, as we start moving into the last third of the show, we start getting these big boy awards, plus the ones to come. But Best Narrative, the overarching story, the journey that we embark on, where are we going? Where do we end up? Did we like that adventure? Was it worth investing our time into the characters, into the world, and into the narrative that's being told? I am such a big story person. That much is very clear on the channel. We love to get involved and in depth. The immersive element is really important to me in terms of the world that's created, the lore that I get to engage with, and of course, the story and adventure we go on together. So with Best Narrative, our 8 nominees are The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, Baldur's Gate 3, Dishonored 2, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Armored Core 6, Deus Ex, Ghost of Tsushima, and Cyberpunk 2077. Some really, really incredible stories here, and ones that I was so happy to go through that entire experience and get through to the end. Some exceptional levels of storytelling and some really, really amazing journeys. I struggled to rank this list. I struggled to nominate this list as well as divide out my winner and my runner-ups. This was really tough because I was looking at things from my subjective point of view and kept going through the games and really looking over the story and the overarching narrative and how it was told and how sort of cohesive and well made the narrative specifically was. And that has allowed me to land on these winners. So we're going to go with our third place, our first runner-up, which is going to be Ghost of Tsushima. I think it's an incredibly powerful story. It's a very well put together narrative, and I'm actually quite happy to give something to Ghost of Tsushima like that because it's an incredibly well-made game and it's such a fun game to play too. I really like Ghost of Tsushima. It's probably one of the more underperforming Let's Plays of 2024, and that is, I guess, understandable in the sense that it's a very cinematic game, and the moments that I guess get people really excited and watching a bit few and far between, and the rest of the game is not that, I guess, exciting reaction-wise, but it is very engaging actually playing it. It's one of the most beautiful games I've played, and I really loved the character of Jin, and I loved the story that we embarked on, towing that line between Ghost and Samurai. And I think the family drama is really, really amazing and really well done. And the way that the characters interact with each other while going on this very personal journey was beautiful too. I think that the villain element was compelling. I think your conflict and tension with your uncle is really, really well done. And it had an emotional ending too. So the narrative and that journey of Jin Sakai, I think, was exceptional. So I'm really happy to give that first runner-up position to Ghost of Tsushima. And I will say, even though I took like a 6-month break and then played Iki Island in 2025, I am going to include it all together and put that into one unit. Even though Iki Island, I did play it separately after a break, I do want to include it in that one package because it feels weird to separate Iki Island and maybe put that elsewhere because it was quite short narratively and it works with the main game. So it's sort of like one of those instances, for example, like I finished Baldur's Gate 3, Armored Core 6, and Dragon Age the Veilguard. I finished those games in 2025 as well, but the full game is counted in 2024. Like the ending of Baldur's Gate 3, obviously, that occurred in the following year. So I'm going to do the same thing with Iki Island and retroactively put it last year. And I think that both narratives of the main game and the DLC were really, really well done. Really well done. So that was third place. And now we'll move into our next runner-up. Following right along from Ghost of Tsushima, we have Cyberpunk 2077 in second place. Because when we're thinking about narrative, that is where my mind wants to go. Because it was a topic of conversation quite a bit that I brought up during the playthrough. There were multiple times where I stated how great the narrative was, and that was something that they absolutely nailed from the very beginning, because we're very aware of the cyberpunk drama in terms of the performance issues and the optimization for consoles and even the PC issues as well, just across the board performance issues, bugs and glitches. Like, it was undercooked and it needed more time, even more time than it had. And obviously those have been, for the most part, pretty much entirely ironed out, so that's good. But the narrative that they had from the very beginning, not even including the expansion of Phantom Liberty at that point, incredibly solid, very well done. The character interactions, the way that your character fits into the world and goes on this life or death adventure, just like, I have to do what it takes to survive and I'm running out of options. That desperation, that storyline is amazing. I love the things that your character gets to do because of it, and the journey that you get taken on, the just the crazy shit that takes place, and the really like highs and lows of that story in terms of really huge action-packed set pieces, which are just fucking amazing. And then you have these just like low, gut-wrenching emotional moments between yourself and another character, or between other characters, and the journey that you're taken on narratively, I felt was just incredibly powerful. And I consider myself blessed that I also got to play Phantom Liberty at the same time and weave that into that core narrative as well, because it just gave you even more. And Phantom Liberty's expansion, oh my god, and the way that you get just your James Bond sort of cyberpunk themed storyline. And something that I forgot to mention during the soundtrack portion of the show in terms of cyberpunk as well, was I wanted to throw it out there of like, we got our cyberpunk Bond theme, you know? So I just remembered to bring that up. But in terms of how we got to play through that story with those new characters that came in, and that it doesn't feel like it's separate, disconnected thing. It feels like it belongs. When it first came up, I thought it was part of the story because I was playing it blind and I hadn't played it before. So when it comes up, just when you reach a part in the story, I just thought that was part of the main game. So it's really cool when you start getting into Phantom Liberty and seeing that it was the expansion content. But I think it was worked in really, really well, that if you never even marked anything in the game as Phantom Liberty, I don't know if you'd even be able to tell. And while I would say that Phantom Liberty does sit a notch higher than the base game in terms of almost everything, like it's such a great product and expansion to Cyberpunk, it all cohesively is a fantastic narrative experience. I think that having that success and success of Edge Runners, and then that motivation to like continue that momentum of fans that came in from Edge Runners, continuing to work on the game, pushing Phantom Liberty out, like all of that just has me so incredibly excited for where we can go for the sequel, and that narrative as well, I think is going to be truly exciting. So Cyberpunk 2077 for the second runner-up. And now we find ourselves thinking about the winner, the best narrative for the whole entire year. And which story would that be? None other than Baldur's Gate 3, of course. The narrative for Baldur's Gate 3 is an exceptional one, and it's a special one. I think it's probably a situation where we're not going to see a narrative presented to us in a game like this for a very long time, because it's so open. There is a core narrative that you progress through, but there is also the fact that that game accounts for how you want to navigate that narrative and how wildly different you want to go about it each time that you play. There is the core narrative of the story and the events that happen in the world, but something that is incredible about Baldur's Gate 3 is that there is a portion of that which is creating your own narrative to go alongside it. And that is your own character is so integral to the world, and your character can be so different, and it has a lasting impact because it's not just the game's narrative, but it's your narrative that you put into Baldur's Gate 3. And I think that gives it something extra, that makes it extra special, that for me in particular, I put a lot of character into my character. I did a lot of sort of off the cuff voicing my character, interacting with the other members of the party, and consider that to be events that happened in my narrative, right? This is like our Dungeons and Dragons characters interacting, the way that my character acted, things that I was able to say and do that I added into my Let's Play. Like that was just part of the narrative. That was part of my story and how the characters adventured together. There's a really amazing narrative that's already given to you, and the way that you can make it your own. That's really the special part about that narrative. And plus a really fucking kick-ass story. Like the way that that is presented to you from the very beginning, and there's a lot of twists and turns and going through that. It's such a large game with so many diverging paths that a lot of people are still probably working their way through Baldur's Gate, and there's a lot of people that haven't got around to it yet. Even despite the fact that the game is huge, there's still a lot of people in my community that probably haven't touched it yet. And so I won't talk about specific narrative points, of course, because the narrative is the sacred element of a game story. You don't want to say something and then everyone's like, yeah, all right, well, cool. Thanks for that. And I've probably done that in the past, and it sucks to get caught in that because a lot of people, we're all human, and sometimes we get overexcited and we share a bit too much. But I've tried to stay on top of it for the most part today as well. So Baldur's Gate 3's narrative, if you've played it, you know what I'm talking about, and talking about bringing your own narrative to it is just very, very exciting. So in terms of the narrative award, I think it was one that was very close and could have gone either way. I just think that there's parts of the Baldur's Gate 3 narrative and how you contribute to it that makes it truly special and gives it the win, because it is that Dungeons and Dragons experience, which is just inherently a powerful narrative system. Like that is just so fun. And there are people that are taking that and they're making their own stories with the custom mods. They've got access to mod tools, and that's going to be an exciting future for the game of Baldur's Gate 3, is that the narrative can get handed to the fans in that way, and we can play custom campaigns, and people can have their own imaginations run wild in that sort of setting. So it's only going to continue to grow, and I'm very excited to see how that's going to go too. So that is the winner for the best narrative of 2024. Jumping into another big category now, and it's probably one of my big three. Again, that's like rounding it out, because we've gone for the music, we've gone for the narrative, and now we're rounding it out with art direction, which is equally as important. These are the three main things I think that I look for in terms of playing a video game. These are my pillars of how much I enjoy the experience. If it nails these three elements, then that is the key to success. I mean, whatever gameplay you want to present to me, how the game plays, that's all well and good. If you've got the music, the narrative, and the art direction to back it up, we're set. So, a competitive list. I mean, it's all been competitive. Do I even need to say it at this point? All of the categories are very, very tightly wound. There are so many games here that I'm like, how do I differentiate? How do I choose? Because art direction is a complex subject as well, because it's not just it isn't really just on a base level how the game looks with your characters and the environment, like what you see right in front of you, because it is the user interface. It is the inventory. It's every item that you pick up. It's all the icons related to things. It's everything, every minute detail created for your eyeballs to be blessed with. That is the art direction, and they have to make sure that they nail it. And I'm such a detail-oriented person and a very artistic and creative person as well, so it's something that really appeals to me. So when we're thinking about art direction, we are thinking on such a broad scale all across everything that goes into creating this visual medium. So let's list off our nominees. We have Baldur's Gate 3, Darkwood, Armored Core 6, Blasphemous, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Dishonored 2, Cyberpunk 2077, and Elden Ring Shadow of the Erd Tree. Some really well-made games visually. And it's tough. It really is tough. It's a bit of toss and turning and trying to figure out what exactly allows me to put one game above another for its artistic direction. And I settled on this trio, and our third place, our first runner-up, is going to go to Baldur's Gate 3, because the game is gorgeous. The environmental traversal, all of these different locations across the 3 acts, the characters, the costume designs, all of that UI, that beautiful, beautiful UI with PC and controller, depending on which one you're playing on. You've got different styles for both. It's a gorgeous game, and some of the most, if not the best looking video game NPCs ever. Look at their faces. Look at how detailed they are. It's amazing how detailed all of that is, and how that factors into the art direction. It's like if those NPCs looked lifeless, that would be so incredibly painful. But they're really beautiful and lovely to look at. So Baldur's Gate 3 does sit in the third place because it does have this element where I think about uniquely created components. A dragon is a dragon, a goblin is a goblin. It's that sort of thing that's got me hesitant to push it up higher, because while the things that are made are amazing, like looking at those red dragons, holy shit, and the way that the mind flayers are so incredibly visceral and detailed, and all of the different variations of the mind flayers we see, traveling through Avernus in that opening cutscene and just seeing like that whole sequence as an introduction, just amazing stuff, really, truly. And I think that's probably one of the reasons I've put it in this spot in particularly, because there is that element of it's taken from the Dungeons and Dragons visual medium, so you do get a lot of that carryover, and the stuff that is clearly unique to that game is fantastic. It's incredibly well made. So Baldur's Gate 3 is in our third place for best art direction. Our next runner-up in second place for best art direction is going to be going to Elden Ring Shadow of the Erd Tree, because what they were able to take from the base game and provide to us in this expansion was nothing short of incredible. The new bosses, the new characters, all of the NPCs that you encounter, the new items, the way that world just looks and feels, the regions that we get to see in this new map. Gorgeously detailed, and just so much to take in, so much to look at. And I really liked that it wasn't just a very easy asset flip. There was a lot of newly created assets and environments for us to explore. Just going up that massive mountain peak, like the lightning coming in, seeing all the way into the distance, places that you're like, how the hell am I even going to get there? Because it's such a, even with the map, it's such a confusing place to navigate. It really is one of the most challenging environments I've had to navigate. And I think that it's one that makes you pay attention to how that world is created and not just looking at the map and trying to find your way through it. I did grow to appreciate that it was also needing to look at the environment itself and try and find your way through. It wasn't just the map will show you exactly where to go. And I think that there's a lot of Shadow of the Erdtree's visual components that all help each other really, really well in that regard. Again, the bosses, we'll touch on the bosses for a bit, just some incredible designs. And like I say, in terms of, they didn't just take, bosses from the base game and go, it's the Shadow version of that boss. And it's like, no, brand new created bosses with unique designs and incredible designs to look at as well. I think Mesmer is one of my favorite designed bosses just in general. I loved that whole snake-like feeling that he had. I think the spectacle of that was really amazing as well. And when we're talking about art direction across the board, you've also got to think about all of these new attacks that are being made and the effects that happen when you're using like magic or like blood attacks and just everything. And the way that they frame all of those cutscenes to introduce certain bosses as well. Just, it gets me so excited. Shadow of the Erdtree just knocked it out of the park visually. Their ability to present a world to you, they really understand how important art direction is. And I think they're forever and always at the very, very top of what can be done across all of the games that they've put out. So Shadow of the Erdtree definitely feels comfortable in this second spot for best art direction. I think it's something that you could really go into such an in-depth rant about, just pulling so many elements of that game and being able to look at the detail they've put in here, look at all the stuff. And it's stuff that you might not even get to see or look at. Like if you have the opportunity to really like pause and analyze frame by frame, you're like, look at what's going on with the boss's animation and how it visually works. But it's all important because it's all in the details. If that stuff was missing or wasn't done very well, it would then stand out instead of just working as intended. So Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree in our second spot. And now that just leaves us with the winner. Sitting here about to deliver the winner of Best Art Direction, I think about why, and I think about the sheer amount of detail and effort that goes into making that world feel truly immersive, making that world feel truly alive, that world that you are exploring and navigating through feels like a real place. It feels tangible. And that was a really special element of this game in particular, because it was one that only pushed my desire to look at every single detail and nook and cranny. It constantly pushed me to do that. And that was Cyberpunk 2077. That is my favorite for art direction in 2024. The way that game handles its visual communication through the graphic design, with the animation work that goes into all of those advertisements. You've got the news reels that pop up. You're watching little like segments and clips of the news shows talking about what's going on in the world. The way that all of the things around you are created to inform you about the type of world that you're in. I thought that was very, very engaging, and it was very effective as well. I really, really enjoyed sitting there in the elevator, going up to the apartment and stopping just to engage with what was going on the screens, and outside of the very clearly like vulgar and obscene advertisements of things that you would get to read, there would be informative content there too, in, like I said, in regards to like the news and certain things that would play. And I think that that was really effective because it made you want to look at it. You're like, wow, I'm just like walking around. I can actually just like sit here. Because there was a lot of video games that when they try and do like, here's a TV, it's just kind of images and it just kind of goes through it. A similar game that came out in around that time frame was Final Fantasy VII Remake. And that's a game that does sort of newsreel stuff and has TVs with things to kind of explain elements in the background of the story. And that's just images that were going through, unless it was a cutscene. So you could see that there was an extra added level of effort and detail going into what was in that world, and on a larger scale as well in Cyberpunk compared to Final Fantasy VII Remake as like an example. You were just looking at like still images progressing through while you would hear the audio, but instead you could actually watch the news segment. And I thought that that was amazing. So that's just one tiny element that goes into how all of the characters are dressed and their visual costume designs are amazing. The details of cybernetics in all of the characters' faces, just so much. The customization of what you could wear and engage with wasn't the best at times, but there was a big variety of what you could do to dress yourself up to be in that world. But I truly wanted to go down every alley, walk through the city, not fast travel so often. I just wanted to look at every single detail that they'd put in there, and I think the environmental storytelling was really, really great. So art direction wise, almost entirely across the board there for Cyberpunk, I was just so happy to, like, I would pick up guns and go into the model viewer and just look at the render and spin it around and see all the details that they put in there. And they had like unique markings on certain weapons. The first person camera, I think, what gave it a really big advantage because of the cinematic quality. They could make sure that what you are seeing is intentionally framed. You are meant to be seeing exactly how this looks, and that just makes for some incredible sequences at so many points in that game. And Phantom Liberty only elevates that even further. It really feels like a playable movie set in that sort of cyberpunk genre. It's fantastic. I will acknowledge that, like, obviously Cyberpunk is also adapted from a tabletop setting, just like Baldur's Gate 3 with Dungeons and Dragons. But I like to think that maybe Cyberpunk has the edge, no pun intended, over Baldur's Gate 3 in just a few elements of how they've decided to take those previously established tabletop elements and put it in that game going into the year 2077 instead of the year 2020. They're able to really change some things up and make it their own, and I just absolutely adored it. So Cyberpunk 2077 was my favorite art direction for 2024. All right, everyone, time for something a little different. We can relax now. We can have some fun. We've had some intense categories, and it's been a joy to work through all of these awards and the nominations so far. We can cut loose a bit because it's getting to the finale. We are working our way through the categories to the final two now. This one, however, is a little bit different. We're just going to relax and take a moment to appreciate you, because thank you so much for being here, not just for this showcase, but for also my channel. 2025 is the 5th year of Mapocolops, and that has flown by incredibly so. I've blinked, and I've gone from finally deciding to start my channel in the months just before COVID hit to working my way through there to be lucky enough to make this my full-time gig, and to sit here now in 2025 just being able to celebrate the games that I've played with you, and that just feels so good.
It's truly something special and such a heartwarming achievement because I've put so much of myself into the channel, and I constantly want to make sure that I'm putting as much effort and as much love into the channel and to the videos that I create as possible. Even if it's spending a month planning and putting together a video like this, celebrating the Mapocolops Game Awards. And it's just so much fun that I get to even do something this ridiculous or this silly, but it's passionate and it's fun, and I get to say thank you, and we get to celebrate the year in reflection. Whether it's your favorite games winning awards or not, you're here and you've watched my content and you've supported the channel, and I can't thank you enough. So thank you so much to all of you watching, all of you supporting the channel, and I hope that 5 years is just a small beginning, because I plan to stick around for a very, very long time. I have a lot of games that I want to play. The 2025 games and beyond look to be truly special as well. So I hope you have enjoyed the show so far. We're almost there, getting through to the final few. So this is a fan favorite category. This is the games on the channel that got the most views in the first episode. And that's essentially how I categorize it. It's very easy to do it that way. How was that introduction to the Let's Play received? How many people showed up to view that at the end of the year? What was the final number? And maybe for some of these games, where is it at now? How has it grown in the months since the end of 2024? So let's have a look at our fan favorites for last year. Starting it off is my favorite video game series, a remake of my favorite video game, and probably the most passionate you will ever see me on the channel, and that is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, coming in at a 12,000 view margin. So that is how we're going to kick off the fan favorite. People showed up for it, but I'm not necessarily breaking into the larger Final Fantasy audience, sadly. It's hard to get in there as much as I wish that I could. There's a lot of successful Final Fantasy focused YouTube channels, and I think maybe that might be why, because I do such a variety of content, but I think I can confidently say you will never see me any more passionate than when I'm playing Final Fantasy VII. So our intro for fan favorite, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Following that, we do jump up a little bit to both Armored Core 6 and Shadow of the Erd Tree, that both kind of clocked around the 23,000 view mark at the end of the year. So they are at the bottom of our list, which I would say is a little surprising, but I think Armored Core 6 just doesn't have that momentum or that viewer push that Elden Ring has, sadly. And then Shadow of the Erd Tree, I didn't get a lot of people coming back, but also I played it immediately, and maybe, who knows, maybe it'll circulate again. Maybe it was because I decided to label the episode 51 and just continue the playthrough from where I left off. I'm not sure, but Shadow of the Erd Tree and Armored Core 6 sitting around that sort of 21,000 mark. And then our next one above that was Dragon Age The Veilguard at 23,000 views. So we had a pretty big reception to that one. I think that was one of my fastest growing Dragon Age openings on the channel. It might have been due to the fact that it was a very popular, for many reasons, it was a very popular game that a lot of people wanted to put their eyes on, for good and for bad, sadly. But it did get a pretty positive response and reaction for the most part, as did a lot of the playthrough, or at least how I decided to handle it, working our way through to the end. So I would say overall it was quite well received, which was very, very nice, because I had a good time with it, especially when we closed out the ending. But Dragon Age The Veilguard sitting at 23,000 for us. Next above that, we have Silent Hill 2 Remake, around the 25,000 view mark, which was very, very nice. Obviously, when I started the channel in 2020 with Silent Hill 2 as my first big Let's Play, I remember waking up, I think it would have been a few days at least, and it started to just climb up there in views, and that scared me, and I started to get warm reception and people saying, hey, I'm stuck at home and I've got nothing better to do, can you please start uploading more instead of once or twice a week? And it started to snowball from there. So watching the difference between Silent Hill 2 1, Silent Hill 2 1, Silent Hill 2 and Silent Hill 2 Remake a few years apart was really amazing. So I think the reception to Silent Hill 2 Remake was really, really great. I do hope that that continues to grow, and I think that's the fun thing about being able to do these playthroughs is they're there forever. So they will always be found by people, and they're always available to be seen by everyone. Even the embarrassing 2021s where I hadn't quite figured things out yet and you hear button mashing and it's all a bit of a mess, but it's there and it's my humble beginnings. So Silent Hill 2 Remake was a really beautiful full circle moment. I think a lot of people showed up for that, and that was really, really nice. People that were introduced to the channel with the original game, watching the remake through with me, it was a beautiful time. And next, above that, almost surprisingly so, this performed much better than I was expecting, was Fallout 2 with 31,000. So that got a lot more attention than the previous titles in ways that I didn't expect, which was really awesome, because I love being able to play older games and have a lot of eyes on it. I love the people that show up for the older games, and that's happened quite a few times. It's happened with Zelda most recently. It's happened with Metal Gear Solid. It's happened with Half-Life, especially that. So there's a lot of older games and older releases that do garner a big crowd, and I really, really love that it's not just I have to play the big new games, I can also play these older classics that I've been meaning to get to for a really, really long time. So Fallout 2 at 31,000 was amazing. That was a good push through that game. Next, we're going to move into The Legend of Zelda with Majora's Mask, which at the end of the year was at 42,000, and now, a few months later, is sitting cozy around a 54,000 mark. So that one is still growing, which is nice, and I think that is a result of the fact that I've continued the Zelda series, so fans are still coming in and being like, wow, he's playing this one, now I can go back to the earlier ones. So Majora's Mask, and then Ocarina of Time with a nice 64,000, now at 76,000 in the months since the end of the year. So Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time both being some incredible viewership experiences, and that sort of continued to motivate me into the rest of the series, and that I have a lot of people to please, and that is next to impossible. But there is obviously some big expectations when it comes to the Zelda games and doing blind playthroughs, and it's been a learning experience. It's been very, very fun too. I've really enjoyed being able to go back to the roots of Zelda, not necessarily in a 2D sense, but the 3D beginnings for now, and going back to the 2D ones soon, hopefully. But yes, Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time, both together performing really, really well. And then we get into our next two, our final two, the biggest two playthroughs of 2024, taking up pretty much most of the space of that year. We had the first half of the year taken by Cyberpunk 2077. The end of the year, that first episode was sitting on around 170,000 views, and now it's sitting on around 200,000, which is just mind-blowing. It took me, I think it was like 2, maybe 3 years. I think it was like 2.5 years maybe for Dark Souls Remastered to hit a 200,000 view mark from 2021 to a couple of years later. Cyberpunk 2077 hits 200,000 views in a year's time, which is fantastic growth, and I'm really, really happy about that. Having that playthrough be so well received and so well engaged with all the way through up until the end was really, really amazing. Obviously, it's very natural for Let's Plays on YouTube since the beginning of time to have a viewership drop off from your first episode for the rest of the playthrough, and then maybe the ending will pick up again and have a lot of people chiming in for that because they're obviously coming in to see the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, depending on how you look at it. I would say that both the ending and the beginning are both very, very high, but you go from the highest beginning to I'm finishing now. And people love to tune in for that. But 170,000 views within that year on just the first episode alone is staggering. So again, just really grateful for the reception to Cyberpunk, because that is one of my absolute favorites. And I had such a good time going through that, even getting all the endings and playing through that, and I can't wait to go through it again, through that harrowing journey once more with V. It's going to be a really fun time. And of course, there is the fan favorite, the number one, the biggest one. And we haven't mentioned it yet, so it's got to be Baldur's Gate 3, right? Sitting at 220,000 views at the end of the year, and in the months since, it is now at around 266,000 views as of the time of doing this video, of course. It only continues to grow. It's obviously not really much of a surprise either. Baldur's Gate 3 is a phenomenon, and I can only be immensely grateful that my channel was also graced by the fan base, right? Because there's so many playthroughs, there's so many people that have played it since release and later, and people that are still playing it now, and it only continues to grow, which I think is really amazing. Sort of the popularity of Baldur's Gate 3 has sort of snowballed. It hasn't kind of dwindled. It's still bigger and bigger. So I'm very, very happy, very grateful that I was able to play Baldur's Gate 3 and have such a amazingly overwhelming reception. That is obviously a challenge for me mentally when I'm thinking about how many people are potentially watching my every single move and critiquing every minor mistake. It's a big audience to give a playthrough to, but I welcomed that challenge and I took that challenge head on to do a playthrough of living with the consequences, having that true Dungeons and Dragons experience, not reloading story events just because we just committed and we made it through to the end. And I really, really enjoyed the playthrough and the choices that were made. But such a massive following for Baldur's Gate 3. And I truly do hope that Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 will get a lot of people showing up for that as well. I know that it's probably unlikely given the fact that Baldur's Gate 3 just has its own unique massive following of people who haven't played the original games. I hope that by now a lot of people have started to go back and to check them out, and if not, play through while I'm playing through it, or watch me play through the original games, because we're going to be going through Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 before we replay Baldur's Gate 3 for Dark Urge. So that's going to be a very, very fun time, and I can only imagine seeing people show up for that as well. I think that's going to be truly enjoyable. So that is the fan favorites of 2024. And again, thank you so very much from the bottom of my heart for showing up and supporting me and allowing me to do this for you guys as much as possible.
And here we are, the final two categories. We find ourselves at Game of the Year and Game of the Channel. This is a split category because obviously a Game of the Year, I apply that to the games that released in 2024. And then I have a Game of the Channel, which is my favorite game out of all of the games that I played for that year. So we essentially get two Game of the Year awards. We're going to do Game of the Year for 2024 first. So the games that we played that released in 2024 was definitely a much shorter selection. We played 4 games because there's just so many games. Too many games, but not enough games. I don't know, man. There's so many games that I want, and there's too many games that I do not have enough time to play. And I'm that backlog. I'm working my way through it. And that's why we're here every year to complete more of the backlog. So for Game of the Year 2024, we have Dragon Age: The Veilguard, Silent Hill 2 Remake, Elden Ring: Shadow of the Erdtree, and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Those are the 4 games that I was blessed with playing in the year that they came out. And Shadow of the Erdtree being thrown in there to give us a 4th game, because is it a full game? Not really, but the Game Awards did it, so I guess I'll do it too. There is no runner-ups for this list. There is no runner-ups for my favorite game on the channel either. There can only be one winner for a Game of the Year award. And while I did enjoy every single game on this list, my Game of the Year for 2024 is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. That game took me on a journey, and not just your average journey through a brand new video game that you're excited to play. It took my inner child on a journey. It took my 5-year-old self on a journey. I was not playing that game as a 29-year-old man. I was a 5-year-old child in the body of a 29-year-old man who just couldn't believe what he was experiencing. I appreciate what Rebirth added to Final Fantasy VII so much. And it's beautiful. I had a bit of a negative reaction to the ending of Remake back in 2020 because it was such a shock, and it did take me by surprise to see how that game was going to proceed. It was a tough pill to swallow as a big Final Fantasy VII fan, but by the time we swung around to Rebirth, there was so much anticipation, and I think that they nailed it in that regard, because if everything was just a one-to-one remake, everyone's just twiddling thumbs until the next one comes out. There's no conversation. There's no curiosity about what's going to happen next. It's actually a really smart way that there is that mystery. Like, how are they going to handle the next one? What are they actually going to do? And while you see these elements that are so incredibly faithful, there are things that differ slightly. There are things that they add. I'm really excited to see what awaits in the third game too. And if they just played it straight, I wouldn't have had any of those feelings, positive or negative. So when we swung around to Rebirth's ending, I was so open-minded. I was so happy to be there. I was just like, okay, I understand what we're doing here. And I had such a great time all the way through. I loved the open world elements of really opening up after Midgar and being able to just explore the world of Gaia and to see all of these regions in such high fidelity, incredible detail, instead of it being the very flat open world as you run from location to location. It's fleshed out with so many things to do, and everything that they added in terms of like the music exploration and side quests and all of the things you can engage with, I really loved. I did not vibe with the Chadley stuff as much, and in that playthrough I had to mute that dialogue because I think it was like it plays out of the controller speaker, and I was like, I'll just turn it down. Actually, we'll just put that down. So, you know, there are some elements that I didn't enjoy, and I think that's the important part. Is while Final Fantasy VII is my favorite game of all time, and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I truly had such a tremendous time with it, I will still be completely openly honest about the things that don't work for me. I'm not going to just blindly defend the thing because it's my baby. I will be like, this doesn't work and I don't enjoy this as much. But those things were very minor for me, because the things that they nailed, the things that they added or changed or like evolved from the original, just so brilliant. I love that they are doing 3 games. I love that it's a trilogy because it's the modern gaming equivalent of 3 discs on the PlayStation 1. It is now 3 fully fledged games, and they're deserving of being fully fledged games. There's some padding in there to get certain events, spaced out a bit, and I can understand those things, but I think given what they've actually added in those sections, for the most part, it really truly works. And I don't feel like I'm like, come on, I want to get to this part, I'm like, I'm soaking it in and I'm having a great time. So Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is my game of the year for 2024. And now let's decide what our favorite game overall on the channel was. When coming to terms with having to decide your favorite game that you played out of all of them, it really is a struggle. Probably historically, as I'm someone that struggles to list my number one favorite of anything, I do like to be like, these are some of my favorites. I struggle to be like, this is my favorite artist. This is my favorite this. Obviously, you've heard me say very confidently, my favorite game is Final Fantasy VII. I mean, I've had my whole life to come to that sort of confirmation. The rest can be a little bit hard to determine. I just have like a group of favorites that I really, really love. Of course, when it comes down to video games and game of the year, it's very serious business. So going through our list for our game of the channel contenders for 2024, we have Silent Hill 2 Remake, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Deus Ex, Darkwood, Cyberpunk 2077, Baldur's Gate 3, Armored Core 6, and The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. Those are our 8 best games for the year of 2024. And again, it was a really incredible year, a stacked year, which made it very challenging. It was nerve-wracking to even approach this year's Game Awards. It's probably why I won't do a Game of the Year, a Game Awards for 2021 retroactively, because that was just even more stacked. So that was wild what I got to play in 2021. I don't think I could do a Game Awards video for that year. It's so overwhelming, the games I played in that year. I played this is getting off track, but I played all of Metal Gear Solid, all of Mass Effect, all through Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Death Stranding. It's such a ridiculous, Knights of the Old Republic. You can't even touch that year and rank all of those games. It's impossible. So 2021, don't even talk to me about it. But 2024, I feel like we were able to settle on some nice Game of the Channel contenders. These were special games. And even the ones that didn't make it onto the list, except for Legacy of Kain, Blood Omen 2, are all incredible games that I got to experience here. It's bugging me that Legacy of Kain Defiance isn't on this list. It bugs me that Legacy of Kain Defiance, doesn't get to win an award in comparison to last year when we had Soul Reaver 2 sweeping up the awards, because Defiance, again, I'm yapping. It's hard to get off track. I'm delaying the inevitable. It's almost over. Don't you want it to just go on forever? Because I don't. I'm ready to finish. I've been working on this for a really long time now, and I think we should wrap up the show and move on. So, Game of the Channel. What game is it? Out of these beautifully, beautifully competitive games, my Game of the Channel for the year of 2024 is Baldur's Gate 3. And I'm going to predict that the chat is going, it's Baldur's Gate 3. It can't possibly be anything else. But I can only hope that given the awards that have been given out at this show and the way that I've spoken about all these games, that there was a hint of doubt that maybe it wouldn't be the crowning champion of the channel. Maybe you'd think, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has a chance. Cyberpunk 2077, it has a chance. It's going to sneak in there. And you'd be right. It's still a very, very close race. I won't say that Baldur's Gate 3 cleared it by a large margin, but it certainly is sitting on quite a high pedestal. Undoubtedly. We all know how high up Baldur's Gate 3 is. It is held in the highest regard in the Video Game Hall of Fame, and it's a monumental achievement. Baldur's Gate 3, just to play as a game on its own without all of that stuff and its popularity and the huge attention and love that it's gathered and all of the awards. Playing that on its own, being completely shut off from the outside world, you would probably come to the exact same conclusion. I was not someone that was swept up in the hype of Baldur's Gate 3. There were people obviously playing it during early access. There were people that saw how immediately successful it was when it first came out. There was a tremendous amount of people really wanting me to play it immediately, and I waited until I was ready, because that's how I love to put my games on the channel. It's when I'm ready, because that's when the Let's Play can be at its best, instead of feeling like I have to put it out there because maybe I'm not ready. And the worst thing that I could do, and the last thing I want to do, is put out something terrible. Even if it's a game that is just that good, that maybe it's not terrible, I just want to be mentally prepared for it. I put a lot of mental energy and time and effort into my playthroughs, and Baldur's Gate 3 was no exception. In fact, Baldur's Gate 3 had so much blood, sweat, and tears and all of my love poured into that playthrough to really bring as much of a Dungeons and Dragons experience into a game and into a playthrough as possible. And I loved every second of it. I've said it earlier today, but Baldur's Gate 3 was a game that did not push me to burnout. I just actually kept going. It was somehow a game that just fueled me even more as we continued to go. There's a period in the playthrough quite early on where I travel back to my hometown for a little bit, and I continued to play and record it on the road because I wanted to continue putting out some episodes, and I managed to do that, and I'm very proud of that. And even though the camera quality was a little bit worse for wear, we managed to make it work, and we continued pushing through, and we made it to Act 3, and I was so ready to keep going, and it opens up in such an overwhelming way, but I took that challenge head on, and I kept pushing through. And there was a break that was taken, of course, but it wasn't because of Baldur's Gate 3. It was just because of everything. It was an end of year break. And then I returned, and we just kept picking up where we left off, and we got to see it through to its conclusion, and just amazing. It really is. So game of the channel for 2024 is Baldur's Gate 3. If you've played it, if you watched the playthrough, you will clearly know why, and I'm sure a lot of people even still have it on their to-do list or are still playing through it themselves, and maybe still even getting through the playthrough, and all in due time. Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 on the channel very, very soon, of course. I really want to get there. I'm working through some games, but we're going to do that, and then we're going to work through to a Dark Urge playthrough and replay Baldur's Gate 3 as well. So that is Game of the Year and Game of the Channel for 2024. And now for some final words before we wrap up this show. Before we close out this show, we want to talk about the most anticipated games for 2025. Another fun category, just like fan favorite, where we don't have to seriously rank anything. We're just going to talk briefly on the games that I'm really looking forward to playing, and hopefully I get to do playthroughs of them either this year or as soon as possible. Here's the realistic element is I play a lot of games from many years. I play old games and new games, and I spend a lot of time with those games. So there's always a long list of new releases, and I'm like, man, all of these look amazing. Realistically, I can only choose a few to give my time and attention to, and then we eventually do circle back and get back to the other ones. Like we had that for some games in this Game Awards, for example, like Armored Core 6 and Baldur's Gate 3 were 2023 releases, and we played them the following year, and glad that I did, because Baldur's Gate 3 got a hell of a lot better with a lot more content over that year before I actually got around to playing it. So talking about the games that are coming out this year that I'm super excited for, we have Expedition 33. I think that looks fantastic. We're going to have a French-developed game that has Ben Starr in it. It's a turn-based fantasy RPG. It looks incredible. I have only seen some of those trailers. They've started to do more previews. They've started to do more deep dives into characters, and I've avoided it because I don't need to. I know I'm going to enjoy it. I know I'm going to have a good time. So I'm holding off to go in with no expectations and just fresh perspective. Hopefully I'm going to have a really, really good time. It looks like it's going to be amazing. So no expectations, so I can be pleasantly blown away, right? Expedition 33 is coming out really, really soon. Following up from that, we have Doom: The Dark Ages as well. This is another game that is coming out relatively soon also, and I was so excited to finally get around to finishing Doom Eternal in 2023. That one was really, really fun because Doom 2016 and Eternal I've had a blast with, and I'm very excited for them to continue that series, but going back to the Dark Ages. Everything that they've shown of that game that I've seen looks very impressive, and it looks super fun. So Doom: The Dark Ages is definitely high up there on my list. And we'll just have to see. It's probably one of the games that's been on a lower priority for me to actually do a playthrough of immediately, but we will see. Hell Is Us is another game that I have seen reveal trailers and a little bit more insight into that game in some recent trailers. It just looks amazing. It looks like a Death Stranding Final Fantasy Souls-like thing, like packaged together at face value. I haven't deep dived too much into it, but from what it's presented to me so far, I really like what I'm seeing, and I really hope that that one is well received as well. I know we've got quite a few people in the community that are pretty excited for that one, and I'm one of them. We're going to also be excited for Death Stranding 2. That might be my game of the year. Spoilers for Game Awards 2025. We'll see. We get to do a Game Awards that has a Death Stranding game in it for the 2025 segment. We'll see how we go, but I'm so excited for that. Unbelievably excited for that. I think it's my most anticipated out of all of them. That is the most anticipated game of this list. I am going to be very happy to share that one with you. And that's probably the one that I will confirm that I will be playing that as soon as it releases and doing a playthrough for the channel. That one, without a doubt, I will be playing it and I'll be sharing it with you. It's very interesting because it's going to be different from Death Stranding, where I played the director's cut and we were a bit late and I'd played through all Metal Gear Solid first. It's going to be my first brand new Kojima game that I'm playing at release. So this is going to be a very special time for myself and the community here who joined me for my Hideo Kojima adventure throughout the years on the channel. Another one that I'm very, very excited for in terms of Kojima, but not necessarily directly Kojima anymore, is Metal Gear Solid Delta. We have our Snake Eater remake, and it looks amazing. I think it's very interesting that Konami has done their remake approach in two different ways. Silent Hill 2 remake, of course, and then Metal Gear Solid Delta being something that retains the original voice acting. It retains a lot of that original game, but its visuals and certain gameplay elements refreshed, redone, and it looks beautiful. I can't wait to go through that game again, and I want to do that game justice. I am not proud of how I finished my original playthrough of Snake Eater, sadly. Things just weren't really good at that point in time while I was recording, and it reflected in that ending. I was frustrated, not in the right headspace, and that is forever a blight on my channel because I love the Metal Gear Solid series so much. I love Snake Eater so much, and I want to be able to play Delta, see it through to the end, and do that game proud another time. So that one's going to be really, really exciting. Those are the main ones. I'm also going to put Ghost of Yotei in here because I am very excited for it. I am tossing up whether or not it's going to be a playthrough, however. I don't know. If I play it, I don't know if it has the audience in terms of watching it. Maybe the Ghost of Tsushima, Ghost of Yotei type experience might be better played closer to release than giving it a little bit more time for people to play it themselves and then watch. It might be a different type of experience. Armored Core 6 and Baldur's Gate 3, games like that, they benefited from me playing it later because everyone had played it and they were like, cool, now I can watch you without spoilers sort of thing. But Ghost of Tsushima, Ghost of Yotei, maybe we'll try and play it when it launches, and we'll see how that goes, because I'm very excited for more of Ghost, especially a PS5 release, and it looks like it's going to be super enjoyable. They've done a big time skip, brand new story. I'm excited for it. Now, those are the 2025 games, but there's a couple more games that I want to throw on this list as well. These two games in particular, one of them has an unconfirmed release date at this time, and the other one was delayed to 2026, and that's Fable. Fable was the only other game rivaling Death Stranding 2 as my most anticipated game for the year, because I've been playing Fable since I was very young, and the Lost Chapters in Fable 2, and even to an extent Fable 3, it's an important trilogy to me. It was something that I played a lot, and Fable 1 and 2 specifically are just beautifully nostalgic games for me. Fable 2 is the reason I got an Xbox 360 alongside with Halo 3, so those were the games to take me away from PlayStation and make me be primarily Xbox for many, many years following. Those were very special games. Unfortunately, it's been delayed to 2026. It was not really much of a surprise, considering we still haven't seen much. They did give us a bit of a gameplay reel, apparently, with the delay. I haven't really watched it yet, so I'm just waiting. I'm patiently waiting, but I cannot wait for Fable. I'm really excited. And the next game, which is currently with an unconfirmed release date, the reveal trailer gave us the flickering between 2025 and 2026. It will probably be 2026, but I can hope. And that's Pony Island 2. Obviously, this Game Awards we got to talk about the Hex and Pony Island, the earlier games from Daniel Mullins, and I'm very, very excited for the Pony Island sequel. Obviously, I've now played, Pony Island, The Hex, and Inscription, and all three of those games had a very fantastic time doing playthroughs of those, and I think Pony Island 2 is going to be no different. And again, another one of those games where I get to play something in a series as soon as it releases and share it with everyone instead of playing catch up. That's always a really fun time, being able to play a game in a series and then experiencing it together as a community. That's a very special thing. It's happened where we got to do Dragon Age, and then we got to play Dragon Age the Veilguard together as it came out. We got to do it with Elden Ring as Elden Ring came out. There's just special examples like that I think are really, really amazing. We'll do it with Mass Effect 5 sometime when that game comes out too. But there you go. My most anticipated. I did want to talk about those because I believe the most anticipated category was missing from the 2024 awards. I just think I had a list of a lot of things that had yet to be confirmed, and we ended up skipping that one. But it's here now because we're kind of in 2025, so it's easier to talk about. It's easier to see what's coming up on the horizon. And I hope I get to share at least 3 of these this year as playthroughs when they come out. Death Stranding 2, for sure. Metal Gear Solid Delta, most likely. And Expedition 33, I would say, might be the 3 that we see for this year. And depending on how we go, we might be able to do even more. And there we have it. We find ourselves approaching the end of the show tonight as we've gone through all of those categories and reached our favorites of each of them. And while we sit here in reflection on the awards show, I am filled with gratitude and appreciation for all of you for joining me and allowing me to make it this far. 2025 is already something I'm looking forward to. We are a quarter of the way through it already because it is flying by way too fast, and we've seen some incredible playthroughs already as I've been ticking some things off my to-do list and continuing some series while starting some new games as well. So it's already filling me with a lot of inspiration for the 2025 Mapocolops Game Awards as well. I do aim to have it a little bit earlier than this one was. I like the idea of waiting until the year is properly done, including any playthroughs that I started in the later part of the year, just to make sure that those games are finished, and then I can include them in the show instead of saying, these playthroughs I started in October, November, they don't count because I'm not finished yet. You know, I want to be able to make sure that we can include those types of games and make it more of a complete recap of the year. This one being the prime example of like Baldur's Gate 3 and other games like Dragon Age Veilguard and Armored Core 6. Those games trailed into 2025, so we just wanted to make sure those were all completed and wrapped up, and so we'll probably aim for like February, March as a release for the continuing Game Awards projects that I do, and I'm looking forward to them. I have ideas already for this year's, for 2025, so it's going to be great. But focusing on 2024, obviously with this show, thank you so much for joining. There's still a little bit to come here. I'm going to see you out nicely. We're not going to close abruptly. There's a couple of things just to see this end nicely and slowly as we begin to reminisce already on this beautiful awards show that we've all got to experience together. And of course, I hope that there are many people that have not yet to experience this live can watch this over the course of the year like they have with the 2023 Mapocolops Game Awards as well. And they're there forever as like these milestones in time of where we were at on the channel. And it's just really nice to be able to share this with my community and to do something special. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for the Mapocolops Game Awards being even able to be a thing. It's just so fun. It's super enjoyable, and I don't get to do any of this without your support and with your constant generosity by giving me your time, and especially in the world that we're in now, time is a very valuable resource, and you choose to spend it with me, and that's something I truly appreciate. So thank you so very much for joining me for the Mapocolops Game Awards of 2024, and I will see you next time.